When Edgar often wonders what life would be like if someone else did his heavy lifting, or if some other guy could handle his workouts and sports for him. A massive fortune, total freedom, that sounds like pure heaven to anyone. It is an impossible dream, but Edgar does not actually have to imagine it. He is already living that kind of life, well, at least technically. Right now, the blue-haired teen is staring out his window in absolute terror. The outer wall is completely gone, blasted to absolute ruins. His top floor has been reduced to a smoking pile of rubble. But even though his current setup is not quite perfect yet, he refuses to give up on his dream. He calmly tells his crew to make sure they collect every single corpse. Edgar works incredibly hard, all for some peace and quiet. It might sound pretty ironic to work this hard just to do absolutely nothing. Honestly, most of us would probably do the exact same thing. He freezes, staring up at the massive beast towering over him. Barks out orders follow, telling his squad to take up their proper positions. But he has a secret weapon. He is never truly alone out here. The fighters launch a perfectly coordinated assault, swarming the giant beast. Edgar draws his sword, getting ready to strike with everything. Every single warrior aims their sharp weapons directly at the giant creature. But here is the crazy twist. Those are not actual teammates beside him. They are his clones. See, normal life demands way too much from us. We are forced to study, work hard, and cook 3 meals every single day. But Edgar has better plans, like spending his days playing video games. He wants to travel the globe and explore every corner of the world, just hanging out with his friends like any normal guy. But it is frustrating that humans can only do one thing at once. Because of that, he always spent his time wishing he had 2 bodies. And somehow his wish came true. Meanwhile, a crowd gathers outside Yongguk University. Everyone is waiting, hoping to awaken some incredible skills. A blonde guy jokes that he needs a massive boost to his intelligence. He is counting on getting some serious superpower today. Our main guy Edgar is already completely exhausted from all this noise. He stands there, wishing he could just go home and rest as soon as possible. That old dream of having 2 bodies pops right back into his head. Suddenly, the high-ranking hunter Devin grabs the microphone for attention. He welcomes the crowd to the 10th Portal program. This government-funded program is designed to unlock their latent abilities. They must step through the portal and face their awakening. Devin calls the first group, wishing them the best of luck. A nervous group, including Edgar, slowly steps forward. Edgar feels his heart racing as his turn gets closer. A staff member asks Edgar Williams if he is in group 37. He nods, yes, he is indeed number 7 in that group. She hands him a scanner to quickly verify his identity. With his electronics handed over, he prepares to step through the portal. Edgar stood just 1 step away from entering the mysterious portal. With a sharp flick of his hand, he stepped right inside, after passing the user. Identification scan, Edgar woke up, but his head was absolutely pounding. It felt like his helmet was literally going to explode right off him. He looked up to see a swarm of mechanical drones flying overhead. Painful groans of everyone nearby showed they were not doing well either. Then, one newly awakened girl gasped, utterly thrilled by her powerful new abilities. She was instantly mobbed by eager guild recruiters, shouting out crazy offers. Hearing about this, Edgar felt a sharp pang of envy. Just then, a friendly young guy approached him with a warm smile. He offered congratulations on waking up and asked if he was feeling okay. Edgar admitted he felt pretty terrible, but the guy promised it would pass quickly. Then the stranger asked if Edgar had actually checked out his new skill yet. With a quiet breath, he summoned his glowing status screen. The holographic display hovered before him, and boom, his active skill was cloning. His passive skill, clone amplification, he quickly scanned his stats. His low health and reflexes were pretty depressing, but hope remained. Skills were always way more important than raw stats anyway. Reading the details, he saw that his ability let him summon energy clones. They would look exactly like him, the total number he could summon. Scaled up with his level, best of all, there were no strict restrictions on using them, meaning he could even summon clones for daily chores. The young stranger noticed Edgar staring blankly at the screen and spoke up. He told Edgar not to worry, saying everyone starts out pretty weak. Then with a curious grin, he asked what class of skill he got. Edgar realized there was no point in lying, so he confessed he got cloning. The stranger's face fell instantly into an awkward, embarrassed look. Edgar raised an eyebrow in confusion. The man quickly cleared his throat and explained. He had met another clone user before, but those clones were just harmless illusions. They had no physical form to actually do anything. This confused Edgar. But here is the catch, Edgar's clones are real. Still, the man offered some advice. He suggested showing his skill to the testing officials for a real evaluation. Edgar looked over to the area where other recruits were showing off. One guy was showing off a skill that turned his skin into solid. Stoned, the crowd watched with nods of approval. Seeing all this, Edgar felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. He quietly asked for the exit. The man pointed the way, explaining he just needed to complete registration first. Once that was done, he could step back through the portal. Edgar headed straight toward the research desk, feeling pretty self-conscious as he waited. The technician ran the scan and told Edgar he had a very high 73% chance of developing combat skills. The scan was finished. His newly registered cloning skill was immediately uploaded directly to his smart bracelet. Edgar headed for the subway to go home, staring down at the glowing screen. Everything had happened so much faster than he had expected. He was incredibly eager to finally test his clones. Meanwhile, heavy clouds. We glide over the city high-rises to the apartment where Edgar lives. Entering the room, he asks his kids if they did a good job today. But by kids, he actually means the active gaming computers humming quietly on his desk. Edgar sits down and stares at one of the screens with a sigh. He checks his in-game stats only to realize they are completely worthless. Extremely disappointed, Edgar Williams slowly climbs into bed. Standard games are losing popularity, but he still hopes for a new release. Besides, Edgar desperately needs a part-time job to cover rent and tuition. He wishes he could hire someone, and that is when his new power clicks. Glancing at his bracelet, he decides to test his cloning skill. Edgar stands up and positions himself right at the bedroom doorway. Taking a deep breath, he concentrates the energy flowing inside him. Mentally, he commands the skill to activate, calling forth a clone. An unsettling, sharp sensation immediately washes over his entire body. The leaking energy forms a silhouette, and the bedroom suddenly erupts in light. Through the blinding glow and rising smoke, a human hand slowly materializes. Next comes the foot, and suddenly, an exact replica of Edgar stands there. The catch, he is completely naked. Edgar Williams just stares in shock. He looks at his synthesized double and asks if it is really a clone. Without missing a beat, the clone nods and confirms his theory. Edgar nervously asks if he can touch the clone to be sure. He feels incredibly awkward asking, but he tells himself to pull it together. Edgar reaches out and gently touches the clone's shoulder. The solid warmth proves it is a physical body, not just some illusion. But yes, his copy is still entirely naked, which is pretty awkward. Edgar tells him to get dressed, pointing to a sweater and pants on the floor. When Edgar asks if he simply commands him, the clone answers yes. He silently thinks about making the clone sit, and it drops instantly. Imagine having a helper that obeys your thoughts without a single word. He mentally orders the copy to stand, and it jumps up immediately. Next, he commands the clone to keep repeating these movements over and over. After a few runs, sweat pours down, showing they share the exact same stamina. Just then, Edgar hears his cell phone buzz loudly in his pocket. Pulling it out, he sees a text message from his friend Ryan. Ryan brags about getting 2 hunter skills and asks what Edgar got. As his clone keeps doing squats, Edgar types back his honest reply. He says he still doesn't quite understand how his new skill works. Predictably, his so-called friend immediately starts mocking him. A floating screen pops up, showing his skill duration increased by 1,000th. Horse racer George Lucas is a true master of the shimmering skill. As an S-class rider in America, he leads the Enlightenment group. He was also the very first person to awaken the Tower of Odin. Now the scene shifts to the main building of the Enlightenment group. The secretary briefs George on their latest massive population analysis. Out of 300 million citizens, 80% are now fully awakened. If they kept pulling people into the awakening program every single year, then within 5 years they would hit a 100% awakening rate. The man admitted that 5 years is actually a pretty short time for this. He stared out at the city from his massive window. The Enlightenment Group headquarters sat right inside this gigantic skyscraper. But let's look back at Edgar Williams for a moment. His clone was training hard for endurance running, and his face showed he was struggling. It was brutal. Other runners in the area noticed him grinding out there every single day. They even worried because the guy always ran fully covered in heavy, closed clothes. A woman who regularly jogged there eventually offered him a bottle of water, seeing how hard he was pushing before his next lap, but the silent clone completely ignored the gesture, stood right up and just kept running. She was left stunned by the cold brush-off, assuming he was probably just a super quiet introvert. Meanwhile, Edgar's clone kept running relentlessly. Back home, Edgar weighed in at 78.4 kilograms. Lately, his appetite was insane, so he ate like crazy. Yet somehow lost 9 kilograms this month. While he sat around, his body just kept improving. In fact, he even felt like he had grown a bit taller. His health, stamina, and reflexes were all steadily sharpening over this time. Using clones taught him a few things, crucially the pain and exhausting fatigue his clone suffered never actually transferred back to him. Second, the double just vanishes if it takes too much damage or burns its energy limit. Third, whenever Edgar's physical body goes through a change, the clone immediately mirrors those new stats. Fourth, even across massive distances, he can easily send commands using only his thoughts. One day, he ordered a clone to make a clone of its own, only to discover it was totally impossible. Even if it worked, that would just lead to endless copies. So yeah, that loophole is closed. Before things got completely wild, Edgar decided to dig up some vital intel online. He stumbled onto a website called the Hunter Wiki. Honestly, let's be real, he never imagined he would actually be studying guides for professional hunters. He soon learned that a stat value of 1 is the standard peak limit for normal adults, divided into ordinary and special categories. Most awakens share ordinary stats, but things like regeneration, resilience, and willpower are special traits. Oddly, the method to unlock them is a mystery. Normal training barely improves performance by 0.001 points. Still, his clone trains tirelessly and pushes past limits to follow commands, meaning Edgar's own progress is skyrocketing at an unbelievable speed. In theory, he could have easily doubled his overall gains by working out right alongside the clone, but he knew his regular body could never survive that level of torture. He grabbed a flyer for a local gym. This place offered personal training, extreme workouts, and muscle building. Edgar carefully read through every single line of the ad. While doing this, he kept calmly playing his computer games. In the end, Edgar decided he would act as the brain, while his clone handled the heavy lifting. The guy checked his phone balance, showing just 123,000. He realized this cash would not even cover the registration fee, mostly because his grocery bills were massive lately from his constant, ravenous eating. To make matters worse, business at his workshop was completely dead. Edgar quickly realized he desperately needed a part-time gig. Sitting down at his computer, he immediately started searching. Looking for open listings, he figured his best bet would be some kind of heavy manual labor. That way, he could build his strength and earn quick cash. At the same time, he decided to handle the first shift himself instead of clones, since his clones would struggle if he gave them orders about a job he knew nothing about. That is when a rather interesting job posting caught his eye. The local Vukan logistics center was urgently looking for temporary help. Edgar quickly grabbed the number and dialed. On the other end, someone answered. He politely introduced himself, explaining that he was calling about the online part-time job advertisement. The manager told him there would be no formal interview or screening. He could start immediately. Then, the voice on the line asked when he was free. Edgar mentioned he could start tomorrow, but they asked if he could come in today instead. He agreed that it was possible. The manager told him to head over right away. They would expect him at the facility by 6:30 p.m. He was quite shocked. Getting hired this easily made him wonder if they were just incredibly desperate for help. But as long as the cash was good, he really did not care. The logistics hub was massive, consisting of multiple warehouses and cargo trucks. Right as evening began to fall, Edgar arrived at the designated loading dock. He brought along his #1 clone, just in case anyone asked questions. They could easily pass as identical twin brothers, Edgar told his double. The clone was told to act natural and use the alias Ryan on the clock. The main warehouse was far more intimidating than he had initially anticipated. Standing there, he had no idea where to go. Suddenly, an older man approached. He immediately recognized the young man and asked what brought him to this facility. Edgar realized it was Mr. John, who actually did not recognize him at first. Because of his dramatic weight loss, Edgar quickly lied, saying he was here with a friend. Hearing this, the friendly older man gestured toward one of the large buildings. The main office was located right inside. Edgar thanked him warmly for the help. Calling their sudden encounter a true blessing, Mr. John smiled and said promising they would catch up later, as soon as the older man walked away. Edgar lightly smacked his own cheeks. That unexpected reunion was incredibly stressful. Turning to his clone, he asked if he was nervous, but the double shook his head. There was zero reason to worry now that they were both fully awakened. With a grin, he told his partner to wrap this shift up quickly. To head home for warm ramen, but get this, real labor is a different beast. Edgar quickly realized he had been way too arrogant about physical logistics work. The endless piles of heavy boxes seemed to stretch on forever, yet for the regular staff. Indeed, they carried massive crates from place to place without even breaking a sweat. He began to wonder if these workers possessed some secret strength-related superpower. Even his clone was stacking heavy cargo like it was absolutely nothing. Observing this, the young man regretted coming along at all. His clone would have easily handled the entire shift alone. Luckily, they finally took a much-needed 1-hour break. The clone watched his master's despair with immense satisfaction. Just then, Mr. John approached, handing them cold cans of soda to help them recover. They took a break to drink water and eat, and the boys thanked him. Mr. John was amazed that Ryan worked so hard without uttering a word. He felt the young man had a strong name, then turned to Edgar. He asked how he was doing, guessing this was his first manual labor job. Edgar confirmed his suspicion, admitting that the physical work was incredibly tiring. Yet the man admired their grit, since most workers quit on day one. They usually fled immediately, which made Edgar realize something rather sad. If he did not desperately need the cash, he would have run too. Mr. John then asked about his university, and Edgar named Jianguk University. Hearing this, the man praised the great school, but the boy downplayed it. Edgar claimed it was nothing special, but Mr. John insisted he should be proud. He said he would give anything to get his own daughter in there. Edgar told him not to stress, admitting he was not a great student. Yet he got in. Mr. John was left completely dumbfounded. Edgar explained he managed it through various certificates and a special permit. Hearing about his unique credentials, the old man suddenly perked up. Silenced, the man went quiet for a moment, clearly cooking up a plan. He finally asked Edgar if he was interested in taking another part-time job. Curiously, Edgar asked what he meant, his attention fully captured now. Mr. John suggested he tutor his daughter instead of working hard labor. This offer caught Edgar completely off guard, but he quickly checked his finances. His balance was tiny, only 123,001 left. This tutoring gig was literally perfect. Mr. John looked slightly embarrassed, though. He admitted his daughter struggled heavily and needed help with every single subject. He wanted Edgar to visit a few times a week for lessons. He offered 50,001 per session, with each lasting 2 hours. Considering the actual hours worked, that was a fantastic deal, so he accepted. Done deal, they shook hands, finalizing the agreement right there. Mr. John promised to discuss things with his daughter first and call him. Staring at the sky, Edgar prayed that this new gig would go well. Just then, a familiar system window suddenly materialized right in front of him. It confirmed his success, rewarding him with the new job and performance points. While his coworkers kept grinding, he realized he had one last thing left. He had a quick errand to run first. He eagerly searched his backpack for a quick snack, only to find it completely empty. Meanwhile, his clone was standing right there, calmly staring up at the sky. Edgar glared in absolute fury, but his clone did not seem to care. The copy was just casually chewing on the very snack he wanted. He snapped at him for eating everything right before the scene cut away. By the next morning, Edgar was still feeling completely exhausted and sore. From now on, he vowed to let clone number 1 do the heavy lifting. Checking his status screen, he noticed his clone was still working hard. Edgar sent a direct mental command, ordering his double to come back. Recalling him was risky. Doing it outside would leave him completely naked. First things first, he needed to find food because he was absolutely starving. He was enjoying his delicious breakfast, but a sudden sound at the door quickly drew his attention. Number 1 stepped inside, letting his master know that he had finally returned from his task. Edgar calmly told the boy to wash up and change his clothes, which the clone did instantly. Within minutes, the task was done, and Edgar asked his clone to hold out his hand. He knew Number 1 was just a temporary clone who would turn to dust if recalled. This entity was not a real human or a living being, just a magical tool. And yet, Edgar could not help but feel a deep sense of pity for him. Hurting his own creation was painful, but he had to draw blood from the clone's finger. Through it all, Number 1 stared back at his master with an empty, silent expression. Edgar quietly apologized to the boy, praising him for doing such a great job. He did everything possible to unlock that crucial regeneration skill. This was one of the few skills with a known unlocking method. A person had to repeatedly wound their body and simply wait for the skin to heal. He would have to cycle through this painful process until the system finally unlocked the trait. So Edgar resolved to keep at this grueling grind for at least another month. Too terrified to cause major injuries, he chose to stick to quick, light needle pricks. He instructed Number 1 to eat some ramen whenever he was hungry and keep training. Edgar explained that he would be out for a bit to handle some outside work. He told his clone to watch the spare phone and handle any incoming calls. Walking through a city packed with modern high-rises, Edgar set off on a new mission. He set out to find this gym, but of course, peace never lasts long in these stories. A voice called out and a guy hugged his side. Edgar recognized Ryan Miller. Ryan had to look twice to make sure it was actually Edgar standing there. He was shocked by Edgar's massive weight loss, though Edgar found the physical contact annoying. When Ryan commented on his new look, Edgar quickly brushed the physical contact off. Edgar explained he was focusing on his fitness and heading to a nearby gym. Ryan claimed to be an athlete too, though his soft physique said otherwise. He asked where Edgar was training, and Edgar casually mentioned the Strong Body Gym. Ryan knew the place well and assured him it was a pretty solid choice. Edgar dryly noted that nothing seemed special there besides the high price tag. But Ryan eagerly chimed in, claiming that the head coach was an absolute stunner. He insisted on tagging along, much to Edgar's complete and utter annoyance. So Edgar and Ryan stepped inside the gym together, finding a solid setup. The place was well equipped, while the gym's head coach was busy eating lunch. Scanning the layout, Edgar had to admit the training floor was actually decent. The manager politely greeted the two, welcoming them to the Strong Body Gym. He asked if it was their first visit, pitching their special grand opening discount. A 3-month membership would currently cost them only a fraction of the regular price. Priced at 160,000 won, Edgar immediately signed up. He secured his 3-month pass and asked the manager to check his posture. The manager gladly agreed, offering to guide Edgar through the proper training steps. After processing the payment, Edgar kicked off his workout with some incline bench presses. The manager watched closely, giving him tips on controlling the heavy barbell. He advised Edgar to gradually increase the weight and push his limits. But suddenly, Ryan casually stepped up and hoisted a 50-kilogram barbell like nothing. Of Edgar and the manager, but his feet drew more than just there. Attention nearby athletes watched him in utter embarrassment and awe. Ryan Miller had a seriously built frame. The impressed gym manager took one look and assumed Ryan had been training hard for years, but the guy proudly grinned, saying it was his very first time lifting. Of course, he hid the fact that his strength spiked after awakening. With his stats at 2.1, Edgar realized that mystery stat was raw strength. Honestly, Edgar felt pretty jealous. Expecting endurance to matter more in lifting, he shuddered to think what higher tier hunters could actually do if a simple strength-boosting skill had such a massive impact. No wonder hunters were the talk of the town despite the dangers of the job. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. He reached into his pocket and answered the call, immediately recognizing the familiar voice of Mr. John on the other end, who had finalized the tutoring plan with his family. He wanted to see if Edgar was free to talk face-to-face at their house. Edgar agreed to head over right away. As fast as he could, it was not long before the young man arrived at Mr. John's place. Edgar was still pretty annoyed that Ryan flexed his skills, but did not even sign up for the gym. Ryan just laughed it off, claiming that his regular presence would only distract Edgar and make him burn with jealousy instead of studying, but that was a lie. Ryan actually skipped because that attractive Female coach was off today. Still, Edgar felt this worked out perfectly. Since he would not have to worry about managing his clone, Edgar headed up to apartment 603. Standing by the door, he could hear some loud, tense voices inside. A young girl was clearly venting her frustration at her dad for making decisions without asking her first. Just then, Mr. John swung open the door, shouting back that he was off to work and they could handle things themselves. But he froze mid-sentence, suddenly noticing Edgar standing right there in the hallway. The awkward silence ended with a sudden door slam, leaving Edgar a bit startled. Inside, the daughter peered out, instantly dying of absolute embarrassment over the messy situation. As Edgar stepped inside, they rushed to put an ice pack on the bump he got during the door mishap. Mr. John apologized profusely, admitting he had not seen him coming. Meanwhile, his wife set down some fresh apple slices. She barely even recognized the boy since he had lost so much weight. He simply smiled, explaining he had taken up rigorous training lately. Turning his attention to the daughter, Edgar asked if her name was Erica, introducing himself as her new tutor. He mentioned hearing about her dream to attend Jianguk University and gently asked if that was correct. Right away, both parents noticed that Erica turned bright red, completely forgetting her angry mood from earlier. She quietly confirmed it, feeling mortified at the thought that Edgar might have heard her shouting earlier. Edgar asked if she was in her final year of school and requested to look over her current academic progress before they started. Erica eagerly handed over her grades, but watch how quickly Edgar's expression entirely shifts. The sight of her report card is a total shock. The grades are absolutely abysmal, and Erica herself knows just how bad it looks. Sensing the heavy mood, Mr. John slowly gets up from the table and suddenly bolts, claiming he is in a massive rush for work while offering Edgar a quick thanks. Edgar watched Erica react to his own face, spotting a flicker of sadness in her eyes. She felt deeply ashamed of her terrible score, so Edgar stepped in to cheer her up. He admitted that he also bombed his college entrance exams back in the day. Hearing this instantly made the stressed-out Erica feel a whole lot better. Edgar promised to do everything possible to help her improve her grades. He set up their tutoring schedule for twice a week. Outside, the morning sun blazed. It lit up the massive high-rises around Edgar's city. Back in his apartment, he got thinking. She definitely had a mountain to climb if she wanted to pass those exams. He thought back to how they jumped right into their very first lesson together. Erica worked her tail off to avoid letting him down. Turns out she wasn't completely hopeless. Edgar logged onto his computer, assuming his clone number 1 was already hard at work. He gave him a spare phone, but if his number of clones keeps growing, buying more devices is going to be a real headache. Booting up his PC, Edgar signed into the exclusive online hunter network. He wanted to see if there were any skills out there like his own. The forums were packed with listings for skill scrolls, but when he saw the prices, a simple beast summoning skill cost a staggering 100 million won. He was left completely speechless. Then he checked the cost of a teleportation scroll. That one was 400 million won, making the poor guy want to cry. Honestly, with that kind of cash, he would rather just buy a decent house. At this rate, it would take him a literal lifetime to buy even one skill. These crazy prices meant hunters made serious bank, even for low-tier abilities. Edgar grabbed his phone to check his bank balance, hoping for a miracle. He only had 233,000 won. That pathetic bank balance left him feeling incredibly flat. He slumped onto his bed. Honestly, who wouldn't? He lay there, seriously plotting his next big move. Scrolling his newsfeed, he immediately hit a story on hunter lifestyles. An A-rank hunter owned the single most expensive penthouse apartment in Korea. Reading that got his heart racing, and he sat up with a jolt. He possessed an incredible power, so why waste it on backbreaking, low-paying labor? He suddenly unlocked a brand new trait called resilience, throwing on a jacket. He made his choice. Back in the year 2000, mysterious portals suddenly appeared. Terrible monsters crawled out of them, invading cities across the globe. Over half of humanity perished in what became known as the Great Catastrophe. It truly felt like the absolute end of the human race had arrived. But right when all hope was lost, powerful superhumans began to awaken. Armed with these strange abilities, humanity somehow fought back and barely survived. Fast forward to 2023, and a new job class has taken over. They hunt down the stray beasts, earning the title of licensed hunters. An online instructor explained that passing the test grants you an official license. This allows you to legally hunt monsters for cash. He laid out key tips. To help ace the exam, arriving at the test center, Edgar was blown away. The Hunter Center was a massive, towering high-rise buzzing with anxious applicants. Crowds swarmed the entrance. Edgar noticed he only needed a couple hours of sleep. Lately, to feel completely energized, he figured his new stats were behind it. With his new vitality, discovering gun shops inside the building. This was the massive Hunter Center, where all kinds of unique people gathered daily. Edgar was completely blown away by everything he saw down there. He quickly realized that those who came here to actually take the test were in the absolute minority. Suddenly, an announcement rang out about the upcoming Hunter license exam registration, taking place on the ground floor, which would close in 20 minutes. Edgar felt a bit of nervous tension creeping in as he walked to the main testing room, slowly pushing the heavy wooden door open with a quiet sigh. Apologizing for interrupting, he saw tables packed with all kinds of candidates. Anxious eyes, seeing the sheer size of the crowd, made him feel incredibly nervous. A few candidates chuckled at his polite greeting before heavy footsteps echoed outside. The chief examiner strode in, introducing himself to the crowd as Hanley. He announced he was a C-class hunter in charge of their testing today. The examiner explained that the entire test consisted of written, practical, and aptitude portions. But then he added a very harsh warning for anyone thinking of cheating. Cheaters get banned. They would be disqualified and blocked for the entire year. A sudden wave of nervous muttering immediately swept through the room of candidates. No mercy, a heavy, suffocating pressure instantly filled the entire examination room. With the tension peaking, Han Li declared the official Hunter exam had begun. Outside, the evening twilight slowly settled over a city buzzing with heavy traffic. Meanwhile, Kang assured his boss that all the funds would be transferred soon. He practically begged his boss to wait, repeatedly explaining that this was only his first day in the field. Cut short, the call ended abruptly, leaving him staring blankly at his phone. CEO Khan was an employee of the JM agency, constantly chasing cash. It always slipped away like sand. Checking his watch, Khan realized the time. The testing period was ending, so he quickly sped toward the Hunter Center. Past, Edgar sailed right through his testing, officially earning his F-class license. Honestly, the entire process felt about as difficult as getting a driving license. The written questions were absolute jokes, requiring only the most basic knowledge. They were given way too much preparation time before the practical tests started. And even then, the target was hung laughably close to his position. As for the aptitude test, it was basically an elementary school ethics class. Low bar, Edgar genuinely couldn't believe how easy the entry threshold was. These people would be carrying deadly weapons and putting their lives on the line. Walking away, the boy turned back to look at the massive Hunter Center. He figured the government just wanted to recruit as many hunters as possible. But in the end, he decided not to overthink the weird situation. That's when he noticed a few hunters handing out business cards nearby. Some of their faces actually looked pretty familiar to him from before. Recruiters, he quickly realized they were scouts from various competitive guilds. Suddenly, a friendly voice congratulated him on passing his hunter exam. The stranger handed over a card from the JM agency, a very familiar name, introducing himself as the recruiter representing none other than Con Blake. He pitched a sweet deal, offering him a solid spot with their agency. They promised the absolute best rates and top-tier support for their hunters. Edgar offers a quick thanks. That is when a floating, glowing screen materializes. His cloning skill just leveled up, unlocking something major. The young man can now summon 2 clones simultaneously, leaving the agency. Representative talking to thin air as Edgar bolts right then and there. He yells his promises to keep in touch, leaving Khan pleading tearfully. Night falls. Edgar Williams finally makes it back to his quiet home. He is absolutely thrilled about his upgraded power, immediately getting to work. First, he summons clone number 1 before calling forth a brand new clone. Edgar welcomes clone number 2, looking forward to their work together. Staring at the business card, he declares they are ready to become hunters. Con Blake had spent the entire evening handing out almost all of his cards. The tired agent desperately hopes at least one awakened person actually calls. But get this, as Con stares at the city, a dark memory resurfaces. Flashback to the grand headquarters of Korea's top guild, Hong. thick stack of financial documents sits on the desk, filled with endless numbers. The guild's chief representative tells Khan he just needs to settle the balance. Khan nods, picking up the papers, but the moment he reviews them, he freezes. The raw numbers on the page are completely different from what he expected. Highly unsettled, the honest agent immediately raises his voice to question the guild. Khan points out that these calculated payouts are incredibly suspicious. The bounty for a troll should be at least 5 million won. But the guild representative coldly cuts him off, asking Khan how long he has been here. Realizing he is a veteran, the official tells Khan he should already know the deal. He sneers that if they actually follow every single rule, nothing is left. They have to cut corners to survive, and that is just how business works. While he respects Khan as a decent guy, he warns him to back off. Do not stick your nose into the guild's private inner business. The guild representative demands to know if he understands, his voice dripping with malice. Looking back, Khan knows he should have just stayed quiet because now he is paying. Just then, a sudden, bright ringtone echoes loudly from deep inside his pocket. Answering it, he identifies himself as Khan Blake, representing the JM agency. It is actually Edgar on the line, asking to meet up to clarify some details. Soon enough, the agent is waiting patiently outside a local cafe for the boy. He spots Edgar already sitting at an outdoor table, waving him over warmly. Khan walks over and apologizes for the delay, but Edgar insists he just got there. Khan smiles and suggests they order some refreshing drinks to start their meeting. Grabbing a cold iced coffee, Khan asks if he wants a very safe dungeon. He suggests a beginner-level zone, and Edgar quickly nods in agreement. When asked about his specific awakened ability, Edgar mentions his skill is cloning. Khan freezes, knowing that basic cloning usually only produces completely useless illusions. Oh, how wrong he is, thinking Edgar is just a weak, useless rookie. He believes the boy has zero combat potential and will be useless in a hunt. Still, Khan hands over the hunter contract, telling the young man to read it. He plans to send Edgar to a low-level area to hunt basic slimes. They are mostly harmless, though they can spray toxic liquids and poisonous gases. Visiting this zone required a full mask and heavy protective clothing to stay safe. But that was not all. Hunters were strictly forbidden from staying there for very long. Mainly due to those exact hazards. Still, Edgar insisted it was not a problem for him. The second choice was the horned hare territory, where hunters could stay much longer. However, the prey there was incredibly elusive, making it pretty tough to turn a profit. Sure, there were basic pests like giant rats, but only these specific areas offered monsters that Khan could actually manage while keeping the young hunter fully safe. In the end, Edgar liked both spots, and the listing prices were incredibly attractive. He slid a folded piece of paper over to the agent, ready to officially sign the contract. Khan quickly thanked the boy for accepting the deal and finalizing the agreement. He then asked the young hunter which of the two territories he would choose. Edgar stamped the document immediately, claiming the man had completely misunderstood his intentions. He had already explained that he liked both places. Khan stared nervously at the clone. The duplicate had materialized right before his eyes, grinning as Edgar explained his plan. He was going to hunt both spots. This immediately triggered an old memory for Khan. He had met a hunter with a similar, illusion-based copy skill in the past. Back then, he asked him to showcase his special cloning ability. The man had clasped his fingers together, and faint illusions began forming behind him. Before long, dozens of clones filled the room, leaving Khan completely speechless. Without warning, one of those phantom clones reached back and slowly drew a sharp sword. Every single clone followed suit, pointing their cold blades directly at their master. Khan watched in utter confusion, wondering why they would turn on their own creator. In a flash, they lunged forward, driving their weapons deep into the host's body. The sight was horrific. Khan yelled for them to stop, but then noticed something strange. Things were not as they seemed. The hunter simply smiled, explaining they were mere illusions. They held no real mass. To test this, Khan reached out to touch a blade. His fingers slipped right through the steel, proving they could cause no actual harm. They were strictly for distraction, perfect for drawing a monster's attention away. Releasing a nervous laugh, Khan admitted that the brief demonstration was more than enough. That old hunter's skill was clearly just trickery, nothing more than a neat magic show. But here is the thing, Edgar's power was on an entirely different level. This physical clone had actually stamped the papers and finalized the legal contract. He had even drank a whole cup of coffee. Khan had never seen anything like it. It was a mind-blowing ability. He jokingly asked if they were actually identical twins. Hearing the ridiculous theory, Edgar burst into laughter right then and there. He admitted the guess made sense, considering how perfectly identical they looked. Edgar clapped a hand on the duplicate's shoulder, confirming it was indeed his clone. While easily mistaken for common trickery, this copy was solid flesh and blood. Then the young hunter casually admitted that he actually had another clone active. He had sent his other clone straight to a local fitness center. Khan was completely speechless when he heard that clones could actually build real muscle. If they grew stronger, Edgar's own base stats would increase proportionally. This was an absurdly broken skill for an F-class hunter to possess. Recognizing his immense potential, Khan listened as Edgar redirected the topic. The young hunter had one final, crucial question to ask about the rules. Entering two different locations at the exact same time, Khan had a solution. He warned that since an entry record already exists, they might face difficulties. Hearing this, Edgar felt a sudden sting of disappointment, but Khan quickly continued. He promised to coordinate with the Hunters Association to resolve the registry issue. In return, Edgar had to accompany him to get his current bracelet scanned. He also needed to demonstrate his skill. Edgar agreed to the condition. However, he specified that his cloning wouldn't be ready until tomorrow night. Khan suggested meeting at the Hunter Center in 2 days, then hesitantly brought up their contract. Edgar casually replied that he had already stamped the agreement. He had verified all the clauses from the photos sent by number 2. Khan suddenly stood up. Edgar immediately tensed, but the man just extended his hand. The older man offered a handshake, saying he looked forward to their partnership. Edgar warmly accepted, returning the sentiment. 2 days quickly passed after their encounter. Standing at the venue, Edgar scanned his surroundings, looking for Khan. Just as he was waiting, a familiar voice called out to him. Khan greeted him warmly, noting that the young hunter had arrived early. Edgar simply replied that he wanted to ensure he didn't keep Khan waiting. Khan explained that almost all major branches of the Hunters Association operated here. He suggested they head inside first to take a look around. Holding ticket number 166, Edgar waited for numbers 164 and 65. After the candidates ahead of him finished, his turn finally came up. The clerk asked if he was requesting dual access to the hunting grounds. Edgar confirmed it, explaining his cobbling clone skill requires another identification band. The employee told him to wait, surprised by the unusual request. He noted Edgar was the first person since Scotland to ask for this. A few moments later, he handed Edgar an official registration form. He directed him to the administrative desk to finalize the paperwork. He added that Edgar should complete his test in the evaluation room. Khan offered to handle the boring paperwork so Edgar could head straight to the showroom. Nodding in appreciation, the young hunter made his way to the testing hall. Stepping inside, he prepared to demonstrate his special skill and summoned a clone. As expected, the summoned clone materialized without a single stitch of clothing. The sheer awkwardness of the moment left both Edgar and his female examiner blushing. Meanwhile, an association research scientist was putting the finishing touches on a device. He meticulously inspected the custom tracking band for any potential defects. Everything was perfectly calibrated. The duplicate identification bracelet was officially complete. The researcher explained that Edgar's clones could now enter the dungeons. A simple fingerprint scan would grant instant access. He reassured Edgar that simultaneous entry and exit tracking was fully supported. The system would easily handle multiple clones. Edgar thanked him for the thorough work. The researcher was highly intrigued, as he had never witnessed such a rare duplication skill. He knew a power like this was unprecedented, not just in Korea but globally. Flattered but eager to leave, Edgar grabbed his clone's arm and made his exit. The researcher watched him go with deep regret, wishing he could study him further. He would have made an incredible research subject, but Edgar was already heading back. He informed the executive director that everything was set, finally his. Preparation for the upcoming commission was complete. Khan asked Edgar if he was headed to the territory to hunt immediately, and he confirmed it since he had nothing else on his schedule today. Khan did not understand why the clone was hidden under a mask, but Edgar explained that he wanted to avoid drawing too much attention to himself. Right then, another man was watching Khan and Edgar's Conversation from an upper balcony, recognizing his old acquaintance, Khan. Blake standing below. This observer was none other than the master of the Heesun Guild, Mikeon. Their private chat was suddenly cut short by a booming voice, calling out to Khan. Blake, right after, the guild leader loudly dropped straight down to the floor, shouting that it had been a very long time, especially in a place like this. Edgar Williams instantly recognized the powerful figure before them. Mike noted that he had no idea Khan was still working with hunters. Glancing up, Edgar realized the man had jumped down several stories. Khan. Blake, feeling the weight of the moment, caught the awkward stares and remained silent. He barely gathered the courage to stammer out a polite greeting to Mikeon, who just mocked him for being so formal and calling him sir. He then eyed Edgar with a condescending smirk, asking who the kid was. Khan explained that Edgar was a hunter signed with their firm. The guild leader cast another look at Edgar Williams, taking a moment to size up his gear. The man instantly realized that the young man was merely an F-class hunter. Mike scoffed at how far Khan. Blake had fallen, remembering that he used to manage C and B-class hunters. He sneered, unable to believe that Khan was babysitting an F-class rookie in such cheap clothes. Khan was quietly seething at the insult, but then Edgar suddenly placed his hand on Khan's shoulder to calm him down. Mikeon froze mid-laugh when he spotted that bold move. With a smug, mocking tone, he sneered that this F-class weakling must have something to say. Edgar met his arrogance with a calm, simple smile. He smoothly said that he was honored to finally meet the leader of the #1 guild in the entire nation. Mike smirked, quite pleased with the flattery, assuming the kid had some common sense, but then Edgar added that the Heesun Guild is definitely #1 at monopolizing top dungeons, banning independent hunters, and rigging the payout rates entirely in their own favor. This sharp call-out immediately irritated the Heesun Guild master. Edgar finished by saying he was incredibly honored to receive praise from such an infamous leader. Mikeon growled that Edgar had some real courage, but in an instant, his playful expression and dark energy completely shifted. Stepping dangerously close, he demanded to know if his combat skills actually matched his massive mouth. Edgar felt the suffocating pressure of that deadly aura, but their standoff was suddenly broken by a staff member calling out to Mikeon. Mike sighed, annoyed that someone had interrupted their little chat. Backing away from Edgar, he muttered that their introduction was done for today, but before leaving, Mike asked for the kid's name. Edgar coolly replied that the chairman could look it up himself. Mike just grinned. Edgar proved to be quite a funny guy, saying goodbye to Mr. Khan, but as he left, the man who had interrupted their chat began scolding the guild leader for acting so inappropriately inside the association building. Soon, Mr. Blake, Edgar, and clone #2 headed out to the hunting grounds. The man awkwardly thanked Edgar for standing up for him. Edgar simply replied that he could not just stand around and watch. Khan then asked if the boy knew about his history with the Haeyoung Guild. Edgar did not deny it, adding that he uncovered everything when he ran some quick research on JM. Information online was pretty scarce, but during his search, he stumbled upon an old rumor about an agent named Khan. Blake. Word was the man had been kicked out of the elite Haeyoung Guild, and some even warned rookies never to join his agency because they would become a target for the Haeyoung Guild. Khan was shocked to learn this old case had actually leaked onto the internet, and now he finally understood why no hunters were joining them. Mr. Blake then asked why Edgar still chose their small agency. The young man replied that it was mainly because of the payment ratio, pointing out their generous 8-to-2 ratio, but there was another bigger reason why he chose them. Edgar admitted that he felt he could trust Mr. Blake to have his back whenever things got tough in the hunter industry. Those last words caught the director completely off guard. Deeply touched, he sincerely thanked Edgar for placing his trust in them. Meanwhile, clone #1 was training hard in the gym. One look at his sweating figure made it obvious he was overworking himself. The coach had already tried to talk to clone #1, but he simply ignored him. Anyone could easily see how dangerous such intense training was, and the other trainers were genuinely worried he might collapse. Suddenly, clone #1 heard a new message alert buzz on his phone. It was Edgar telling him to wrap up and grab a quick shower, letting him know that he would be waiting outside the gym entrance at exactly 4 o'clock. Obediently, clone #1 chugged some water and headed straight for the showers. Seeing him finally call it a day, the instructors let out a massive sigh of relief. Now the action shifts to a dungeon with poisonous slugs. Edgar was busy destroying the toxic beasts one by one. Before long, his collection tank was already half full, and once he hit that target, the young hunter decided to call it quits. He was incredibly relieved to pull off the heavy mask, which had made breathing nearly impossible. Edgar mentioned to Mr. Blake how stuffy it was inside, comparing it to wearing several thick face masks all at once. Khan nodded, pointing out that while the slug dungeon is safe, most hunters avoid it. Edgar now fully understood their hesitation, realizing he would not have lasted much longer either. The seasoned guild leader explained to the boy that once his container filled up, he could easily swap it out at a rented locker, though surviving a full 6 hours would be extremely tough. Khan mentioned there were rumors that buying top-tier gear and masks could help him survive a bit longer, though Edgar highly doubted he could endure even 2 hours in there, let alone 6. But then a clever idea struck him. Edgar remembered he had clone number 2, so he handed the tedious collection task over to his duplicate. Before heading out, the young hunter wished his clone the best of luck. Then he requested Mr. Blake to transport him over to the field with the horned rabbits. Edgar planned to tackle this zone alongside clone number 1, but he was missing. The young man realized he had not actually picked him up from the training facility yet. Speak of the devil, at this exact moment, clone number 1 was waiting patiently right outside the doors. Edgar's clone number 1 waited patiently. That evening, Edgar finally picked number 1 up from the gym. The evening sky was draped dark colors swallowing the city whole. Mr. Khan asked the boy if he named his clones number 1 and number 2. Edgar replied that any fancy names would only confuse him. Keeping them numbered was much simpler. Mr. Khan understood his logic. Since they were clones, real names were useless anyway. Edgar changed the subject, noting that guns were the standard for hunting horned hares. He asked Mr. Khan if he should have brought his own gear for this. Mr. Khan told him not to worry at all, since they could easily rent all their gear directly at the hunting grounds. Eventually, Edgar would need his own gear, since rentals were restricted to the area and could only be used on site. Suddenly, Edgar heard a bizarre sound and asked what it was. Mr. Khan smiled and said they had finally arrived. Their destination was the Eugen territory. Armed guards in military uniforms patrolled the entire area. Soldiers stood guard everywhere, heavily armed and alert. They controlled every single entrance and exit. This massive outpost was absolutely gargantuan, making the slug territory look like a tiny backyard in comparison. Mr. Khan nodded, explaining this was the famous Ujongan region where monsters had made a breakthrough. Edgar recalled hearing about these devastating monster breakthroughs. In the past, normally, barriers keep the beasts trapped inside the portal, which is why most hunts happen within those gates, but on rare occasions they breach the barrier, obliterating everything in their path and claiming the land. That's when people call these disaster zones monster breakthroughs. 5 years ago, a massive breakthrough occurred here, but most high-ranking beasts were wiped out. Now only F and E-rank monsters remain, making this the perfect training ground for rookie hunters to practice. Edgar looked around, wondering how anyone could sleep with all this racket. Soon he and Mr. Khan stepped into the main hunter-gathering hall. Mr. Khan gestured toward the armory, telling Edgar he could get set up. With everything there, for a single fee, he got a rifle, night vision, goggles, range time, ear protection, and 400 rounds of ammo. Total came out to a steep 700,001. It was a massive chunk of change. We all know that pain, and Edgar handed over his card. Mr. Khan reassured him that a successful hunt of these hares would easily cover the cost, since one single horn was worth an entire jar of slime. Their target was Building F on the 3rd floor, which was heavily compartmentalized. As they approached the elevator, Mr. Khan gestured that they had arrived. The thunderous, deafening roar of gunfire immediately filled the entire room. They had stepped directly into the active firing range, where other hunters were already blasting hares. Some veterans had already piled up massive stacks. Mr. Khan pointed out station number 4 for Edgar, asking him if he actually knew how to shoot. Edgar confidently shrugged it off, claiming he had only missed 3 times during his entire licensing exam. But Mr. Khan frowned, deeply concerned that the boy had somehow missed so many times on stationary, point-blank targets. Regardless, Edgar locked and loaded. He says he almost feels bad for the horned rabbits, stuffing some earplugs right into his ears so the loud gunfire won't bother him. Next, the young hunter boasts that no monster can possibly escape his sharp, eagle-like gaze. Meanwhile, Mr. Khan is just glad the other hunters have earplugs in and won't hear Edgar's rifle fire. Sighting in, Edgar spots a horned rabbit. He calls it out, making Mr. Khan pretty excited by how incredibly fast he is. The kid begins taking slow, steady aim at his target. He gently pulls the trigger on his weapon. Right then, Edgar's wild rabbit hunt officially begins. 3 long hours pass. Since that first shot, Edgar sits there in complete despair at his results. For 3 whole hours, he did not hit a single rabbit. Total embarrassment. He is disappointed, starting to think all of this is completely pointless. At first, his aim was actually dead on, but the clever horned rabbit instantly sensed danger approaching and bolted, dodging the exact spot where his bullet landed. Every time Edgar shoots, the quick beasts escape. Even the agency rep has to head out because the sky is getting pretty dark. Our hero cannot even cover the price of his wasted bullets, so he calls it a day. Then he turns to his clone number 1 and orders the double to shoot those rabbits with the gun before reeling them in using a harpoon. Edgar tells him to send a quick text with the number 1 for every success and to call him if he runs out of ammo. Exhausted, the young man says he is heading home. Before crawling into bed, Edgar decides to check on his overall progress. He is quite relieved that at least clone number 2 is pulling weight with the slime. Thanks to that, Edgar's stats are rising steadily. He feels pretty good about it. But a dark, lingering worry still plagues his mind. He remembers the chilling fear he felt when guild leader Hast got close. Edgar Williams knows that he still has a very long way to go. His rabbit hunt was a complete failure. The guy never expected it to be this tough. Edgar falls asleep, hoping clone number 1 can catch at least 1 rabbit. After a while, his phone starts vibrating with non-stop notifications. In the morning, there are 46 unread texts from clone number 1 waiting for him. The next day brings the exact same sunny weather as yesterday. Mr. Con Blake stares thoughtfully right out of his office window. He is suddenly pulled from his deep thoughts by a loud, chiming ringtone coming from his desk phone. The man answers, announcing that they have reached the JM agency, but on the other end of the other line, they ask if this is the agency representing the hunter Edgar Williams. It is actually the manager of the slime area, and he begs Mr. Khan to come over immediately and stop the kid. The agent is utterly stunned to hear that Edgar has been hunting for over 24 hours straight, completely out of control. Khan replies that he will rush over right away. Meanwhile, Edgar finally wakes up from his deep, peaceful slumber. He notices a notification from clone number 1 and assumes the duplicate simply ran out of bullets. At first, he cannot comprehend why there are so many missed alerts on his screen. Every single text from his duplicate says the number 1. Edgar gets chills as the truth finally hits him. Meanwhile, Mr. Blake arrives in a rush at the local slug hunting grounds. He is completely shocked to see that almost all the massive storage tanks are overflowing. How could one boy fill them all in a single day? The ground workers scrambled to calm the panic clone down. Meanwhile, Khan realized it was no time to stand around shocked, so he quickly called Edgar to share the good news. Slime territory, he said. Clone number 2 filled everything in 1 day. Every single reservoir was full. Khan said they were about to call the cleanup crew and asked Edgar to order number 2 to stop hunting. Edgar was thrilled. He asked if they could send more cleaners to the U. Johnson sector. Khan had no idea why the boy needed them, but Edgar knew the entire dungeon passage was stuffed with corpses. The crowd stared in sheer disbelief at the massive pile of dead rabbits. One bystander secretly pulled out his phone, hoping nobody would notice. No way, it was impossible to believe this kid did it all alone. But the evidence lay right there. A recruiter approached clone number 1 to praise his unbelievable skills. Kim Butler handed him a card from the Brown Bear Guild. Kim asked if he was signed anywhere yet, but the clone just stared back, cold silence. Kim knew he had to stay patient since raw geniuses are always a bit strange, but another volunteer shut that down. They already tried talking to him. He completely ignored them. Kim quickly recognized the other faces in the crowd, rival recruiters. They were all here for the kid. One of them complained aloud, saying he should have at least said a single word. Just then, Edgar walked up and handed number 1 more ammo, ordering him to keep hunting. He told him to let the agent handle the corpses. Finally, Edgar praised clone number 1's work. the clone was absolutely thrilled to hear. His master's praise, right away he gripped his weapon, ready for more. The crowd's jaws dropped. Was he seriously about to start hunting again? Nobody left, they all stayed to watch. Meanwhile, Edgar realized something. He had severely underestimated his own creations. They were only at 50% capacity, half as strong as him, but they possessed something special, absolute drive, a direct focus to finish the job. Without a single drop of doubt, fully locked onto the target, Edgar believed they could go even further. Suddenly, a voice broke his thoughts. Erica leaned in closely, asking her teacher what on earth he was thinking about. Edgar apologized, handing back her test while noting her skills had improved quite a bit since they last studied together. He explained he recently visited the dungeons for some light hunting, and things went way better than expected. That was what occupied his mind. Erica froze. She had absolutely no clue her teacher was a hunter. Edgar blinked, surprised he had never mentioned his second job before. Erica shook her head. She knew nothing about it until today. Then she leaned in, asking if he knew the hunter currently taking over the internet. Edgar frowned, asking who she was talking about. Erica grinned. People were calling him the shooting god, Eagle Eye of U. Johnson. Edgar nearly choked on his laughter. What a ridiculous, over-the-top hunter name. Erica shoved her screen forward. Look at this. The guy is wiping them out. Over 200 rabbits was enough to set a new record, but whenever people asked questions, this guy refused to answer. Naturally, everyone started calling him cool and mysterious, making the topic a massive viral sensation. However, the footage quickly showed that when asked for his name, the clone blurted out Eagle Eye U. Johnson. Edgar was absolutely mortified when he heard that ridiculous nickname. Erica admitted the guy was incredibly cool, before confessing her own dream of becoming a hunter too. She had even managed to get her hunter license, but was still a bit terrified to go out. Flustered, Erica asked if she did well on her next exam, whether Edgar would tag along with her just once. He replied that it wouldn't be a problem at all, promising to take her if she got into university. She eagerly asked her tutor if he was actually being serious, and Edgar swore it was true, adding that he knew some very safe spots for hunting. Thrilled, the girl agreed and held out her pinky to seal the promise. Edgar reached out his hand in return, and they locked their pinkies tight. Erica then warned him that he had better not think of backing out. Edgar chuckled and agreed, telling her that if she kept up the hard work, he promised that if she kept working hard, she would secure a spot at Jianguk University. After their tutoring session ended, Edgar stepped out. Erica's mother asked if they were finished with class. Edgar confirmed they were, and then the mother asked if Erica was keeping up with her homework. Erica listened closely from her room, hearing Edgar admit he was nervous at first but found her talented. The girl's mother warmly offered Edgar a quick bite to eat before he left, but he politely declined, explaining that he had another appointment. Erica was absolutely thrilled about seeing him again, since he was a real hunter. They had connected instantly. Truth be told, she originally hated the idea of a tutor, simply because he was an acquaintance of her father. But Edgar treated her so well and explained the concepts so clearly. Plus, she could not help but notice how handsome he was. But she knew she had to pull herself together. Standing up with renewed determination, she focused on her books. Meanwhile, Edgar headed straight to Yu Jiangsun, wondering if the corpse collection was finally finished. Suddenly, Mr. Blake spotted Edgar Williams arriving. The young hunter was quite surprised to see him there too. Mr. Khan said he was checking the training camp before asking what he was up to, and Edgar mentioned his tutoring. The director noted that while he frequently dispatches collection teams to various dangerous sectors, this was actually the absolute first time he had to gather such a massive crew just to collect horned rabbits. The grand total was 352 carcasses. Mr. Khan told him to check his settlement. Edgar pulled out his phone and stared at a balance of almost 33 million. He was completely shocked by the massive payout and shyly asked if such a massive sum was supposed to be in his account. Mr. Blake explained that the boys' combat skills easily exceeded F grade, so they adjusted the mutual settlement to 83%, matching E grade, even though Edgar was not yet officially an E-class hunter. He thanked the executive director, but suddenly an unfamiliar voice cut off their conversation, and they turned to look. He cornered Mr. Kang, asking if he was the guy's manager. Kang admitted that he was. The manager then asked the hunter's name. In a low, menacing voice, the thug replied that he was a hunter whose hard-earned prey had just been stolen. Every single horned rabbit he targeted was wiped out by that clone. His entire haul for the day was completely ruined. Then, the hunter demanded cash to cover his expenses. Mr. Kang leaned over and whispered to Edgar, warning him they had chosen the wrong area. He had no idea thugs like this operated here. Edgar paused, quietly thinking his options over for a moment. He looked up and quietly told Mr. Kang he had a brilliant plan. The hunter barked, demanding to know what they were whispering about. In a menacing voice, he demanded only 10% of the clone's profits, but hearing this absurd demand, Edgar just burst out laughing. The irritated hunter snapped, asking what was so funny. Edgar played dumb, acting like he had no idea, and pointed directly at his clone, calmly announcing that this guy wouldn't be coming back around here for a few days. The bully was absolutely furious at being ignored. Edgar then casually suggested that Mr. Kang go wait in the nearby coffee shop. This utter disrespect was the final straw for the enraged hunter. Shaking his fist at the clone, he screamed at Edgar not to ignore him. Edgar calmly ordered number 1 to take action. The hunter threw a punch, but he never expected his own punch to carry so much weight. Number 1 went flying back several meters. His limp body slammed directly into one of the building's support beams. Dark blood began soaking through the mask. The stunned hunter had no idea what happened, since he really hadn't hit him that hard. Right at that very moment, Edgar was recording the whole thing on his phone, screaming about how cruel it was. He loudly declared this an unprovoked act of violence on a sacred hunting ground, insisting that the public would be outraged. The commotion quickly drew the attention of workers gathering up the horned rabbit carcasses nearby. Edgar dramatically yelled that it would be an absolute disaster if this video went viral online. The hunter was now completely desperate. Edgar slung a friendly arm around his shoulder, showing him a freshly recorded video. With a smug grin, the boy suggested that the bully just walk away quietly, leaving the defeated hunter with absolutely no choice. Later, Edgar and Mr. Kang finally made it to the coffee shop. There, Edgar was surprised to learn about the Haeyoung Guild. Again, Mr. Kang believed that today's aggressive attacker was definitely one of their members. He explained that because the Haeyoung Guild is so massive, all kinds of wild characters join. Edgar, curious, asked the agent how he was so sure the guy was with them. Mr. Kang replied that the thug had been watching them since the very moment they arrived to collect the bodies. Then, a dark realization struck Edgar. He realized Mr. Kang believed the massive guild would soon target them for payback. The agent explained that the guild was acting out because they assumed Edgar's mysterious clone was actually another hunter trying to breach a contract with them. Other recruits faced intense harassment, forcing them to quickly quit and leave the agency. Because of that, only a handful of rank F hunters remain, including Edgar. And even now, Mr. Kang couldn't promise that they were safe from future threats from the Haeyoung Guild. Edgar calmly replied that he knew the risks before he signed up and he wasn't going to back down now. He assured his agent there was absolutely nothing to worry about, promising that he wouldn't let them get away. With this, he already had a master plan to become much stronger in no time. He laid out the whole plan to Mr. Han, asking him what he thought. Mr. Han admitted he had never really thought about it before. They set their next meeting for tomorrow at 2 p.m., with Mr. Blake suggesting a local hunter shop. It was the perfect spot, filled with trading booths for weapons and armor. Hunter gear has been traded forever, but massive department stores are moving in. Because these retail chains took over the industry, you can find anything there. Inside, the clerk proudly presents Edgar with a heavy-duty titanium armor suit. It guarantees solid defense against standard E-class monsters. He tries it on, loving how comfortable and light it feels. He takes the uniform, but only buys a single knife for combat. A simple blade is plenty since he plans to master pistols. He then orders 2 more sets of armor. Mr. Kang asks if he needs skill books. Specifically, Edgar is looking for a familiar skill, though he doubts they will find one here. Edgar wants a specific familiar skill, but doubts they have it. Then they stop at a specialist shop. Mr. Kang suggests they check inside, and they begin browsing through the massive inventory. While searching through the items, Edgar suddenly spots exactly what he has been looking for. It is a rare familiar skill, letting him share his senses and vision with summoned beasts. It would let him share sight with his beasts, but the price tag is insane. 100 million won. Totally broke, he decides to make a bold move with his agent. He tells Mr. Kang that it is time to take their relationship to a new level. The agent immediately catches on. Edgar needs a massive advance on his pay. Mr. Kang offers to lend him 50 million won on the spot, and Edgar eagerly thanks him. He must raise the rest himself, but tells him not to worry. If his strategy works, they will make it back in no time. Deal done, Edgar successfully grabs the skill book. Back in his room, he eagerly unpacks the skill orb and reads the instructions. It notes that if the user cannot control mana, they must activate it through physical contact. This is absolutely perfect. He has zero clue how to control mana. He searches the sleek device for a moment before finding the main power switch. Finding the switch, Edgar carefully places the skill bead right in front of him. Holding his breath, he carefully presses the power button to turn it on. He touches the orb, keeping it in tight contact with his body. Suddenly, the entire room is flooded with a blinding stream of light. Boom, the system window pops up. His familiar is finally created. Pure energy, tingling sensations surge right through his entire body. Look at that, the skill orb is gone, ready for action. He stands up immediately, summoning clone number 1 and clone number 2 to him. The clones materialize in their new uniforms, waiting for his command. This is his plan to become absolutely unstoppable. Talk about a smart move. Later, while sitting in a local coffee shop, Edgar asks Mr. Blake about the hunt. The agent replies that everything went perfectly, far exceeding his expectations. Edgar casually explains that the clones only have half of his power. Yet one of them still wiped out over 300 rabbits. To test them, Edgar orders a clone to take massive damage. After all, timing it perfectly and fearlessly taking a fist to the face is no easy task. Edgar points out that clone number 1 could have easily smashed his opponent's face. Hearing this, Khan realizes Edgar means that despite their weak stats, the clones have superior control. That is exactly the case, and trust me, he will exploit this to the fullest. When Mr. Blake asks how he plans to do that, Edgar has a surprisingly simple answer. They need to visit 2 specific locations first, starting with a specialized training ground. Here, they will master both long-range weapon shooting and intense short-range combat techniques. Upon arriving, the range coach approaches Edgar and asks if he is here to register. But when Edgar says he is just here for skeet shooting, the man quickly gets things ready. He prepares the area immediately, allowing Edgar to push his clones to their absolute limits. Instantly, the combat trainer is baffled that his new visitor wants to spar immediately. Meanwhile, the firearms instructor is equally stunned that the other clone is demanding a pistol. The martial arts coach demonstrates how to disarm an opponent wielding a wooden stick. Still, he remains deeply skeptical and asks Edgar if he is truly ready to fight. Over at the shooting range, the other coach wonders if the kid even knows the rules. He asks if Edgar is absolutely sure about skipping target practice and using a real pistol. Without a single shred of hesitation, both clones give a firm, confident nod. The instructor warns them that this is a highly dangerous, real firearm, not a toy. A few seconds pass. Now watch closely. The ultimate trial finally begins. Clone number 1 instantly disarms his sparring partner, knocking the stick away in a flash. Meanwhile, clone number 2 fires a perfect shot right into the target. Both coaches are left utterly speechless by the display, meaning the initial trials are officially over. With that phase complete, Edgar announces he now needs to unlock the familiar skill. This sudden request catches both Blake and the clone off guard. Blake remembers it as a basic sensory link, with beasts and wonders what Edgar plans to do. But the young summoner explains that this technique shares far more than just simple eyesight. It fuses every single sensory input, connecting smell, touch, and spatial awareness into one. He tells them to imagine utilizing this powerful link while his clones train and fight. While the clones train, he absorbs their muscle memory. Edgar stands perfectly still, taking a very slow, deep breath. As he activates the skill, brilliant rays of blue light erupt around his body. Now Edgar can feel every single sensation, measuring the distance of his first clone spar. He senses the precise angles of every joint as they bend and lock in combat. Simultaneously, he feels the perfect physical balance of clone number 1's shifting stance. He tracks the contraction of each muscle and the fluid flow of raw physical strength. At the same time, he experiences the steady, focused breathing of clone number 2. He feels the precise line of sight, the sharp recoil of the pistol, and everything in between. In this way, he feels every movement of both clones at the exact same time. By utilizing the familiar skill, all of their combined physical expertise flows directly into his mind. Moments later, Edgar finishes checking his new skill. He successfully retains the physical experience of the wind rushing past the clone's face. The distinct smell of gunpowder and the heavy kick of the gun still linger with him. However, the mental fatigue of both clones begins to weigh heavily on Edgar's mind. They do all the grueling work, while he simply absorbs their hard-earned muscle memory. Since they share his exact physical build, Edgar feels like he can master any skill instantly. Repeat all these actions right now. A translucent screen suddenly pops up right in front of him. It alerts him that his strength and reaction speed have both increased, prompting Edgar to keep pushing with his sparring and shooting practice. He focuses deeply and triggers that familiar skill once more. Through this trick, he can literally see everything his clone is looking at. Right now, he is watching clone number 1 square up with the gym coach. The instructor has a pretty terrifying look on his face, making Edgar realize he needs to build up much more power. Nearby club members are shocked that their own coach is actually stepping up to spar this random guy himself. Clone number 1 and the veteran trainer take their stances. Within seconds, they clash in a fast-paced duel. Using wooden training sticks, a grin creeps onto the trainer's face. He does not think his opponent's strikes have any real polish, assuming he is totally new to stick fighting, but his own defense is starting to slip because clone number 1 is somehow anticipating every single move he makes. The copy smoothly dodges each incoming strike and masterfully deflects the heavy wooden blows. The coach is genuinely stunned that this mysterious opponent can counter his moves so easily. Clone number 1 immediately pivots into an aggressive counterattack. It is an incredibly heavy blow, and the veteran realizes with horror that the kid is mirroring his very own combat style. This realization makes him seriously sweat. He aggressively lunges forward, but the clone slips his attack once more. Honestly, everyone watching is completely blown away by these wild skills. Clone number 1 instantly retaliates with a sharp strike, putting his opponent on the defensive, and before the guy can even catch his breath, the clone is pressing forward with another assault, but the trainer is not that easily defeated. He quickly evades the incoming strike by pulling off a spectacular mid-air flip. For Edgar, watching this crazy acrobatic maneuver unfold is a massive shock. The trainer lands smoothly and disarms clone number 1, sending his weapon flying. The spectating members are thrilled that their instructor won, but they have to admit that the challenger was dangerously close to taking him down. Back in his body, Edgar suddenly feels a sharp pain in clone number 1's wrist. The coach stands up, acknowledging that dangerous strike. He asks his opponent if he wants to keep going, while Edgar telepathically checks in to see if his clone is doing all right. The silent copy does not reply at all. Instead, he lunges forward, snatching the training stick right back from the trainer. Everyone watching is completely stunned by this sudden move. Even the experienced instructor did not have time to register what just went down. Edgar is deeply surprised that his copy chose to keep fighting. Clone number 1 stands right before the startled coach and calmly states that he is ready for another round. Though taken aback, the trainer accepts his challenge. Edgar decides that is plenty for now and prepares to check in on clone number 2. He immediately cuts his mental connection with the first clone, shifting his focus over to where his second clone is currently practicing his target shooting. Another shooter at the range is incredibly happy with his own performance. Standing nearby, his wife is smiling and praising her husband. Watching this through the link, Edgar feels pretty embarrassed. After all, clone number 2 even accidentally shot the target belonging to the shooter next to him. Still, he tells himself to focus up on his form. First, the clone locks the posture of his upper body. He must keep perfectly still, turning only along the line of movement, tracking the flying clay saucer as he waits for the exact moment when once the target and the intended trajectory align perfectly, the ball will fly straight to the plate. Edgar studied every single detail. He desperately wanted to learn what his clones were truly capable of. Twilight settled over the city, and Edgar focused deeply. He prepared to sync up with his clones, but shifting between them was incredibly exhausting. Suddenly, he felt a wave of intense dizziness. His mana reserves were completely drained, leaving him absolutely exhausted and desperate for a quick rest. Still, he was amazed by the sheer frenzy of their actions. They had zero fear or hesitation, moving exactly the way they needed to survive. Next time, Edgar wanted to tag along to see how well he would perform on his own. As he sat resting, Erica happened to walk past the exact same spot. Suddenly, a familiar voice called out to him, addressing him respectfully as teacher. He was genuinely shocked to see Erica here and asked what she was doing. She claimed she had spent the entire evening studying hard in the library. Edgar doubted her story, but she insisted she had already finished all her homework. Meanwhile, a shady figure watched them closely from the nearby sports field. Puffing on a cigarette, he asked the hunter if this was the guy. We then flash back to a tense confrontation with a representative of the Hong Guild. The powerful guild representative was absolutely furious with the failed job. Wade explained he only wanted to threaten Con Blake, but someone filmed the incident. The representative asked in disbelief if someone actually recorded his violent attack. Wade tried to promise he would take care of the entire mess himself. But the furious representative snapped, warning him to keep his mouth shut. He ordered Wade to stay away from Mew Johnson territory completely. And even if things blew over, Wade was officially cut off from them. To make matters worse, the guild representative told him he was now nothing but a street thug. Furious, Wade hurled his phone against the wall. He stomped it to pieces, his mind consumed by pure, unbridled rage. Seriously, imagine getting kicked out that fast, but then a voice interrupted. Bari Gun walked up, asking why he was acting so incredibly furious. Bari mentioned it had been a while and pressed him for details. Wade had no choice but to explain exactly what happened to his career. Bari was shocked that Wade had let the kid walk away so easily. He joked that pride always comes before a fall, especially with top guilds. Wade asked if they had any other work, since his old guild banned him. From Mew Johnson territory, Bari then turned to his buddy, Jackson. Asking if he had any gigs, Jackson replied there were plenty of options. But as they spoke, they spotted a young couple sitting nearby. Wade instantly recognized the guy. It was the student who filmed him. Bari asked if he was absolutely sure, and Wade nodded without any hesitation. They slowly walked over to get a much closer look at this mysterious kid. Meanwhile, Erica asked Edgar what he was doing out here so late. Edgar said he was practicing, but rude voices suddenly interrupted them. Bari swaggered over, claiming he heard the boy had caused some trouble. Boy had a serious conflict with his brother. Edgar has absolutely no idea who these guys are, but peeking from behind the bully. He spots the hunter he was secretly filming just moments ago. Realizing the situation is pretty bad, Edgar quietly prepares his clone skill. He politely asks what they want, but Wade snaps, telling him to guess. Bari tells his hot-headed buddy to chill, then looks directly at Edgar. He asks if Edgar really filmed their brother, doing something incredibly stupid. Delete that video, Bari promises, and they will all walk away peacefully. Edgar hesitates, asking if they will seriously just let him go like that. He slowly starts reaching out with the phone, but then stops with a question. What guarantee does he actually have that they will keep their word? Bari smirks, realizing this kid is not stupid at all, and shrugs. You are right, he admits, you are not leaving here in one piece. If Edgar was smart, he would have deleted the footage immediately. Now, Bari does not care. Edgar quickly whispers to Erica, telling her to find an opening and run. Then he looks at the thugs and claims there is actually a big difference here. He did not expect to get cornered this fast, but he is not backing down. He boldly warns the thugs that he is going to beat them all. Bari laughs at the kid's sheer arrogance and signals his men to attack. They rush the defenseless teen, who barely manages to dodge the first strike. But Jackson's quick follow-up punch grazes Edgar right across the face. The hunter follows up with a heavy kick, sending Edgar staggering back. Edgar tries to hold his ground, but the next brutal blow knocks him down. And honestly, you can't blame her for panicking, as this brutal fight unfolds in front of her. Edgar crashes hard onto the grass, admitting his first fight is going terrible. He struggles to stand up, but before he can, Erica suddenly steps in to protect him. The girl gathers her courage, summoning a small, glowing spark of magic. With a terrified but determined look on her face, she tells them to stay back. Edgar is stunned. He told her to run, yet she is defending him. But looking at her back, he can tell that something is very wrong. Under that brave front, her entire body is shaking with absolute terror. The thugs grin, suddenly excited to find out they are facing an awakened. But Bari snaps them back, pointing out she is just a kid. He smugly asks her what exactly she plans to do if they refuse to leave. He challenges her, taking a slow step forward to see if she will actually fight. "Stay away from us," she screams, desperately trying to keep them at bay. Bari keeps advancing anyway, leaving the panicked girl with absolutely no other choice. She unleashes her magic, sending a glowing orb straight into the man's stomach. The impact explodes, throwing up a massive cloud of dust all around them. The other thugs look on, worried about what happened to their boss. But Bari's voice cuts through the haze, complaining that awakened rookies are everywhere. He steps out of the dust, telling Erica she should have stayed out of this. With weak magic like that, she is way out of her league. He tells her to grow up, pointing a threatening finger right at her face. But Edgar instantly leaps in, growling that this fight is far from over. Before the man can react, Edgar drives a heavy fist straight into his face. Complete shock, stunned by this sudden strike from her teacher, Edgar waited to see if his strike had worked on Bari, while other thugs stepped up. They came to defend their fellow soldier, with Wade absolutely furious at Edgar's attack. The guy remembered that during their sparring, the clone completely ignored the training stick. He had predicted his opponent's moves just by watching his shoulders. And those hits did not just use his arms, every single leg muscle was engaged. From his legs to his lower back, every muscle group perfectly aligned for the strike. Channeling force from his core to his hand, Edgar focused all his battle experience. He knew there was no way to dodge Jackson's incoming strike. So Edgar made a split-second decision. He had to strike back immediately. With pure laser-like focus, he actually managed to knock his opponents flat. But this intense physical and mental strain left Edgar pretty exhausted. Bari Gun admitted the kid fought pretty well, adding he had no interest in crushing weaklings. Edgar felt his entire body still shaking from the recoil of that blocked punch. A recoil that, heavy from a mere swing, meant his opponent possessed terrifying strength. The monster had awakened physical strength, meaning Edgar could not afford even one mistake. Not even once, Bari suddenly lunged forward, ready to tear him apart. Edgar played it incredibly safe, calculated with every single move he made. He managed to land several solid blows right to Bari's face, making the brute furious. How dare a rat attack him, Bari thought, as he threw a wild counterattack. Edgar knew he couldn't let any damage accumulate if he wanted to survive. He read his opponent's movements and danced back, dodging with perfect timing. Then he drove another heavy fist straight into Bari's jaw, twisting the brute's face. Bari's expression turned insanely aggressive, channeling everything into his fist. He wanted Edgar dead. The attack was massive, forcing Edgar to back away. But he couldn't retreat. One of the thugs had reached out and grabbed his ankle. The thug didn't miss his chance to get revenge on Edgar. He looked up and, trust me, things were about to get way worse. Then Bari's devastating fist pierced right through Edgar's defense. Erica gasped in absolute horror, watching her teacher take such a brutal hit. Still standing, even Bari Gun had to respect his insane endurance. The kid's grit was real, and Edgar knew he just needed to catch his breath. But the enemy wasn't about to give him even a moment of peace. For a second, Edgar thought he was done for, but wait, who just hit Bari? He barely had time to process what had happened before his eyes. His student Erica had saved him again, blasting Bari with a powerful sphere of magic. The thugs were absolutely furious that some schoolgirl was interfering with their fight. They immediately charged toward her, determined to teach the girl a lesson. But they didn't get far because right at that very moment, they were cut off. Edgar's clones materialized out of nowhere, slamming the thugs hard into the ground. Erica never expected any backup, but clone number 1 and number 2 arrived just in time. Bari stared in confusion, completely unable to understand how these clones appeared. But his confusion was quickly cut short by Edgar's cold, mocking voice. The young man smiled, telling Bari that he had finally caught his breath. That bold declaration made Bari fly into a rage, which was exactly what Edgar wanted. The man lunges forward to strike, but Edgar easily dodges, exactly how his coach did during sparring. Standing over Bari, Edgar calmly thanks him for giving him a real combat test. Edgar kicks the man away, leaving a defeated Bari collapsed on the grass. Wade and Jackson also lie unconscious after facing the clones. A system window flashes before Edgar, informing him that all his attributes have been upgraded. His cloning skill has officially reached level 3. Edgar finally collapses onto the grass in absolute exhaustion. Erica and his clones immediately rush over to help him. Night falls over the city, and on their way back, Edgar speaks. He tries to explain why he ordered Erica to flee from the fight. He knows she saved him, but insists it was far too dangerous. Erica admits her teacher shocked her, since she never suspected his secret. She never imagined that the famous rookie hunter was actually just Edgar's clone. He begs her to keep quiet, warning it could cause more trouble. Erica happily promises to stay silent as they finally reach her house. Edgar gently asks if her injured hand is okay and if she can still write. Erica tells him not to worry, since it was only her left arm. Then she jokes that if he is so worried about his student, he should really consider cutting down on her heavy pile of homework. But Edgar points out she already finished everything in the study room. She sighs, disappointed that his memory works so well at times like this. Then Edgar turns to her with a soft smile and genuinely thanks her. He admits he could only win that intense battle because of her help. Erica proudly agrees, saying those sweet words are best spoken over a meal. She suggests a delicious lunch, so Edgar promises to treat her sometime soon. Erica immediately holds her teacher to his word, because let's be honest, who would pass up free food? She reminds him one last time that there are absolutely no refunds here. Edgar smiles, amused that she never misses an opportunity to get free food. Behind him, his clones are awkwardly standing around, waiting for orders. Edgar finally notices them, asking why they are not busy practicing right now. They explain that the gym and shooting range are closed for the night. So Edgar bends down, grabs a couple of branches from a nearby bush. He hands them the sticks and orders them to go train in the park. Let's fast forward 1 month. Mr. Blake calls Edgar to check on his progress. The teen confidently replies that everything is going exceptionally well so far. He can now easily hit targets with a revolver as his skills improve. He even summons a third clone now, earning praise for his fast growth. Mr. Blake notes this will definitely speed up his overall development. Edgar agrees, mentioning that Mr. Khan will be shocked by his current power. Edgar then makes a sudden request, asking him to find 3 new hunting areas. Mr. Khan is caught off guard, but promises to search for them immediately. Edgar knows he can count on him to get the job done quickly. Mr. Khan asks what time the young hunter plans to head out tomorrow. Edgar explains that he will send his clones to train early in the morning. That means he will start hunting in the afternoon as he ends the call. He turned to the clones, ordering Clone 1 to train his upper body, Clone 2 to build his lower body, while the third did aerobics. Edgar then told them to head to the park to train and return by 12 p.m., but right before they left, he made sure they left their guns at home. At the same time, the guy decided to watch videos on how hunters cleared high-rank monster zones. He noticed that his clones could absorb information incredibly fast. They easily copied any movement, as long as their physical bodies could handle it. So Edgar realized that if he studied these endless monster raid videos, the clones could copy those strategies and hunt just like the professionals. With that, he began watching one raid video after another. Before he knew it, night turned into morning, and he was still watching. Suddenly, the sound of incoming footsteps broke his deep concentration. He did not even realize it was already 12 p.m. Edgar immediately ordered his clones to take quick showers and sit down. Despite pulling an all-nighter, the guy still felt completely energized. He had watched raids on some vicious monsters. Now he needed to see if this raid strategy would actually work. But battles were not his only concern. Edgar also needed to focus on his mana control, since his previous sparring session had completely drained his reserves. Just then, the guy received a new text from Mr. Blake, reminding him of their meeting. Edgar quickly told his clones to get ready to move. Together, they headed outside to meet Mr. Agent. Standing close to his own clones, Edgar felt a strange chill of danger and deep unease. Soon, Mr. Khan informed him that the hunting zones were fully prepared nearby. Edgar requested the man to look after the clones, which highly surprised Mr. Khan, who expected him to tag along. Edgar explained that he would monitor them using his familiar skill, and that he wanted to focus on his own breathing training. The guy asked him to drop the clones off at the zones and report back. After the car drove away, Edgar prepared to focus on his own business. The guy slowly inhaled and exhaled, releasing the heavy tension built up in his body. He tuned out the ambient noise to concentrate deeply. During meditation, it was helpful to visualize the exact sensations of actively using a skill. Edgar recalled that whenever he summoned clones or shared senses with them, he could feel raw energy surging from deep inside. The guide voice told him to breathe deeply for 10 seconds while imagining mana circulating through his body. Edgar imagined that familiar power flowing through his limbs, and suddenly, the energy actually began to move on its own. The mana spread to every corner of Edgar's body before the intense sensation finally faded away. A system window suddenly appeared, announcing that his new meditation skill was unlocked. This skill would boost his magical power. Meanwhile, a tragedy was unfolding. Nearby at one of the active hunting zones, a terrified hunter struggled to comprehend where this monstrous beast had come from. In a basic F-rank dungeon, they only expected mutant fish, but a true nightmare was waiting instead. Viciously devouring the prey, the panicked hunter knew he had to warn the association guards immediately, but a massive, clawed hand suddenly grabbed under the hunter's sharp blades. The guy wanted to scream for backup, but his plans were cut short. A massive monster slammed a blade right against the hunter's head, and within seconds, only an agonizing human scream echoed out of the cave. Meanwhile, Blake made it to the final sector of the ruined wastewater facility. He warned the clone about the deadly mutant fish lurking around, which were well known for their terrifying bite. He finished by telling number 3 to stay on high alert, with every single clone deployed to the designated sectors. He messaged Edgar directly. The veteran agent was genuinely shocked by the kid's bizarre and insane ability, allowing him to clear 3 separate fields while relaxing back safely in his room. He knew that whatever happened in this hunt today would turn the entire hunter community upside down. Meanwhile, Edgar was celebrating in his dormitory, convinced he had unlocked the legendary skill of mana breathing, but the system notification warned him not to mix up simple meditation with actual mana breathing. His excitement quickly deflated. He realized that this legendary technique was not going to be that easy to unlock. Soon after, a notification pinged saying all clones were ready, so Edgar decided to check on their progress. He focused his mind and activated the familiar skill. Instantly, a brutal visual of a massive rat being sliced apart flashed. Talk about an absolute jump scare right after activating the skill. It turned out he had synced perfectly with clone number 1, who was already neck-deep in combat. Everything looked smooth, and those raid guidebooks were really paying off now. Suddenly, clone number 1 spotted a massive swarm creeping in from the shadows. Edgar sat back, ready to watch the battle. These giant rats, despite being mere F-rank monsters, were incredibly nasty. The strategy videos always warned hunters never to face them alone, but there were still a few solid solo methods if you found yourself cornered. First of all, since these vermin always charge in a straight line, the key is to back up and start blasting. Clone number 1 executed this strategy perfectly, letting loose a hail of bullets. The guide had mentioned that if firearms failed to clear the entire pack, you must switch to close combat. Since their skulls are thick, the only targets are the eyes or the soft spine. This was the ultimate trick to shut down the survivors. Plus, everyone knows these mutant pests reproduce just as fast as normal rats, so if you can farm them efficiently, the experience point payout is absolutely massive. As the video narrator started explaining how to target their spines, a janitor randomly walked in and blocked the lens. Meanwhile, clone number 1 fired a clean shot with blistering speed. The projectile tore through the air, heading straight for the monster's spine. It was a perfect hit, proving Edgar's theories right. The clones fought exactly as the training guides described. They did not freeze or panic upon facing the terrifying beasts, maintaining absolute focus on their target. No matter how chaotic the battle got, they just kept slaying, one by one. They carved a path through the monster horde. Through this proxy link, Edgar's family could rack up experience points without directly participating in the hunt. His stat points were climbing incredibly fast. The stronger he grew, the faster his clones would clear. Edgar orders his clones to wipe out all the lowest rank F-rated monsters. Today, one of the main hunting areas goes completely silent. The local hunters get suspicious. They usually run into beasts here, but right now, absolutely nothing. Then they spot a dead giant rat carcass and move in closer. Walking closer, they find the entire floor littered with countless dead beasts. The hunters immediately start grabbing the free loot. Meanwhile, Edgar smiles. His clone hunt is going smoothly, but synchronizing with clone number 3 changes everything. A sudden wave of panic hits him as he realizes he overlooked a massive detail. He forgot to instruct his clones to collect those dead rat carcasses. Edgar quickly orders clones 1, 2, and 3 to stop hunting. They need to gather all the bodies and store them in the vault immediately. He worries that other scavengers might steal their hard-earned loot. But before he can stress further, a strange sight catches his attention. He asks clone number 3 why he ignored the mutant fish lying right behind him. The clone answers that he was not the one who killed those beasts. Edgar scolds him anyway because every single monster corpse is valuable right now. Yielding to the order, the clone steps forward to harvest the remains. As clone number 3 gathers the mutant fish, he notices something weird. The carcasses are violently hacked to pieces, meaning someone else did this. Edgar wonders what kind of person or beast left these chaotic, messy cuts. Suddenly, the clone spots a bizarre chunk of flesh that does not belong to a fish. He asks his owner if he should harvest this weird piece as well. Edgar freezes in absolute terror. The clone is holding a severed human hand. Before he can process this horror, a rustling noise echoes from the nearby bushes. You just know things are about to get ugly here. The clone draws his pistol and carefully moves in to investigate the brush. Suddenly, something drops heavily right in front of him with a dull thud. But it is just a severed fish head, a cheap distraction to bait him in. Instantly, a massive, terrifying presence looms over the clone, raising his guard. He readies his weapon, but before he can even blink, his right arm is severed. The strike is too fast to process, just a sudden, searing wave of heat. Miles away, Edgar screams out as a blinding surge of agony tears through him. Every bit of physical trauma on the clone's right arm translates directly to him. Just as the suffering peaks, the sensory connection suddenly snaps shut. Pale and shaking, Edgar stares at his own right hand in shock. Phantom pains and absolute dread still echo throughout his entire nervous system. The sheer shock forced his mind to break the link automatically. But he cannot afford to panic now. He has to get a grip fast. Edgar immediately dials Mr. Blake to ask for the exact location of Zone 3. Blake tells him it is an old wastewater treatment plant near Incheon. Edgar tells him to deploy clones 1 and 2 to that location immediately. He says he is heading out too and will explain everything on site. He warns Mr. K that there is a major issue in the third zone. And this is not a minor glitch, they are dealing with a serious threat. Back at the ruins, the bleeding clone collapses to his knees before a towering beast. He dissolved, fading slowly until absolutely nothing remained. Only empty clothes sat in his place. Edgar stepped out, slamming the car door. Trembling, the lingering shock still rattled his entire body. He finally arrived at the abandoned plant, housing the third hunting zone. A sudden snap inside, the mental connection was completely severed. Number 3 was dead. The screen showed a massive cooldown. 6 hours and 34 minutes, Edgar approached the guards. They let him in. The agent should have been here already. He was supposed to lead the clones in himself, stepping onto the property. Edgar spotted the agent and his remaining clones waiting. Mr. Blake stood there, explaining he had brought numbers 1 and 2 just as Edgar requested. Edgar immediately explained the grim situation, telling him that number 3 was gone. A different beast had killed it, something far worse than a mutant fish. This new monster possessed overwhelming power, and Edgar described its horrific form. It looked like a mutated fishman, sporting a grotesque aquatic head and terrifying human-like limbs. Mr. Blake recognized the description instantly. People called this specific nightmare. A fisherman, the agent insisted they immediately notify the main security post. They needed to seal off the entire area right away because even a full squad of E-rank hunters stood zero chance against it. The beast was a deranged hazard. Mr. Khan turned to warn the sentries, aiming to lock the gate, but Edgar grabbed his arm and stopped him. Edgar insisted they hold off until his clones could cross through the portal. He refused to stand by uselessly, pleading for Mr. Khan to trust his plan. He needed the agent to believe in him, just like he trusted his creations. Stealing his mind, Edgar activated his skill, sending clones 1 and 2 ahead. They slipped through the portal, bracing themselves for a brutal, desperate clash. Their primary objective was simple: locate the spot where number 3 was butchered. The 2 clones slipped deep into the dark woods to search the area. Tracking the path, they eventually discovered the clearing where the creature waited. Edgar watched through their eyes and his stomach dropped. Luck was not on their side. Though Edgar was an E-rank hunter, these clones only possessed half his power. Exactly 53%, placing them at an F-rank rating at best. Fortunately, the wounded fisherman was not at full strength either. With proper strategy, they might actually pull this off, sending a silent command through the link. Edgar ordered them to focus all fire directly on the beast's head. Gunfire erupted as a barrage of bullets tore straight toward the target. The rounds peppered its massive hide, but the creature barely even flinched. Edgar realized with growing dread that the bullets were simply bouncing off. Spatting uselessly against its skin, spotting the clones, the fisherman roared. It launched itself high into the air, plunging directly down toward them. Both clones dived outward, barely evading the earth-shattering impact. Seizing the split-second opening, Edgar commanded them to strike back immediately. The blade connected, but only managed to scratch the monster's iron-hard skin. Infuriated, the fisherman whipped around and lunged at his attacker. Clone number 1 dodged just in time, leaving the beast's blade embedded deep in a tree. With a body that massive, wielding a giant sword among these trees should be impossible. But that was just wishful thinking, because the fish-eater starts hacking down trees like toothpicks. Clearing the forest one by one, Edgar quickly realizes he completely miscalculated the beast. Taking a step back, he commands his clones to launch another assault on the wild monster. This time they aim straight for its arm, but of course, it is not that simple. No use, the giant fisherman tightens his fist and points at a clone. Edgar struggles to find a fatal weak point, but then a sudden realization hits him. He remembers his previous shot. Only one bullet actually drew blood. That is his target. Edgar decides to concentrate all his firepower right on that existing wound. The beast howls in agony. Edgar's risky plan actually worked. Now it is time to exploit it. The strategy shifts to absolutely riddling the monster with lead. Clones 1 and 2 open fire at the exact same time, targeting the fisherman. It works beautifully. Severe wounds tear open, and blood starts pouring out of its body. Thick blood flows down his hand, dripping right onto the hilt of the giant sword. Instantly, the blood ignites. The burning sword points straight ahead. Edgar watches in pure shock, completely unable to understand the terrifying magic happening right before his eyes. The fishman is growing even stronger. He blows past the first clone easily. Now he is charging the second. Edgar realizes the monster's true power comes from that sword. It is a blood resonance weapon, but using it means the beast is desperately wounded. This final clash will not last long. Edgar presses the attack, trying to deal a fatal blow. He keeps wounding the beast through his clones, but the stubborn fish-eater refuses to yield. He fights back desperately. Edgar never expected an easy battle anyway. If blood must be shed to end this, then he will spill every single drop. He unleashes a relentless offensive, pushing his clones to strike with everything they have got. But the monster is not going down without dragging someone to hell with him. Clone number 1 takes a devastating hit. Suddenly, the beast swings its fiery blade. The burning sword slices toward clone number 1, but clone number 2 moves to block. He successfully intercepts the heavy blow. Now, both clones prepare to strike back together. The clones coordinate another simultaneous strike, determined to end this fight once and for all. They carve deep wounds into its hideous hide. The enraged beast glares at them. But the exhaustion is too much. The drained monster finally collapses to the cold ground. It is finally over. Edgar lets out a heavy sigh of relief, his heart slowing down. His battered clones can barely even stand, completely drained of all energy. With no ammunition left, today's hunt is officially coming to an end. Edgar realizes he needs to notify the agent immediately so they can call the collection team. But right then, a trail of fresh, bloody footprints on the dirt catches his eye. Panic sets in. What if the giant fish-eater is actually still alive? Edgar immediately orders clone number 2 to follow those tracks. Things are looking incredibly bad. That path leads straight toward the active portal. Meanwhile, the local guard steps in. He warns the gathered hunters that a D-rank monster has just been detected nearby. Because of the danger, access to the portal is now strictly forbidden. The association is sending backup. The guard promises to update everyone once they arrive. The hunters are absolutely furious about this sudden delay after working so hard for their prey. Mr. Blake sighs, silently hoping that Edgar is moving fast on his end. But then, the sudden shout of the guard snaps him back to reality. Spotting something weird near the portal, he immediately orders his partner to call the unit commander. Instantly, the guards raise their weapons, aiming at the beast creeping out of the portal. Wait, it is the same fishman Edgar failed to completely defeat. The guards unleash a hail of gunfire, desperate to keep the beast back. But the bullets barely slow it down as the creature completely crashes through. Suddenly, one of Edgar's clones leaps from the bushes to take a massive swing. He hurls a dagger with absolute precision, aiming right for the target. It hits the fishman but bounces harmlessly off his hide, just as Edgar suddenly appears. Grabbing the monster, the young hunter grips his blade tightly and strikes with everything he has. He drives the dagger deep into the fishman, sending a fountain of dark blood spraying everywhere. The surrounding guards can only watch in absolute disbelief at the brutal sight. With a heavy thud, the massive creature collapses helplessly onto the cold ground. Unreal, the clone looks incredibly proud of its master. Meanwhile, an investigator calls the association to report he has arrived at the scene. He promises to send a full brief once he takes a look around. Walking up to the crowd, the guy cannot believe what he is seeing. A small crowd has gathered right around the body of the defeated beast. Looking closely at its ugly features, he confirms it is indeed a fishman. He introduces himself as an association rep and demands to know what went down. The guard explains that there really was a dangerous D-rank monster here. However, a lone hunter who entered before the lockdown has already taken care of it. Knowing this was supposedly a weak F-rank hunting zone, the investigator is totally baffled. He asks if some elite, high-level D-rank team showed up out of nowhere. And honestly, who could blame the guy for being completely and utterly dumbfounded right now? No team was involved, the guard says, pointing to a kid standing nearby. He explains that a single F-rank hunter did this, using some weird clone skills. How he cannot wrap his head around an F-rank doing this? How could someone at the bottom tier take down a D-rank using simple clones? Examining the body, he notices the blows were all focused on one vulnerable spot. This kid managed to bypass the need for expensive magic ammo entirely. He looks closely at Edgar and the agent standing beside him, deeply intrigued. It makes no sense. How did the boy land those moving shots? Shaking it off, he tells the guards he is going inside to inspect the portal. He wants to make absolutely sure there are no other D-rank threats hiding within. Before leaving, he orders the guards to gather every bit of detail. After all, telling the association that an F-rank solved their crisis is pretty embarrassing. Now get ready, because Edgar is about to get a massive wake-up call. He just unlocked an active running skill that grants a massive extra stat boost. On top of that, he gets a passive skill called Art of Shooting. This will heavily boost his combat power whenever he handles a firearm. Next is Regeneration, along with a devastating active skill called Mighty Punch. The move lets him channel all his physical power into one single, destructive fist. Best of all, his base stats have just skyrocketed across the board. Edgar is shocked. He did not expect to gain this much power so fast. Realizing his clones survived thanks to the new healing skill, he turns to Khan. His clones were pretty badly injured, but they had plenty of time before the next battle. So he activated Regeneration to help them recover. Meanwhile, the agent was absolutely thrilled that Edgar had defeated the D-rank monster, though Edgar himself admitted it was a pretty risky fight. Mr. Kang was totally confident that the boy could easily clear the E-rank zone, but Edgar wanted to train more and level up his two clones. Right in the middle of their chat, Edgar suddenly remembered the fisherman monster's weapon. He mentioned to the agent that it had been carrying a strange sword that literally absorbed blood, so Edgar approached the fallen beast to grab the blade from the floor, but Mr. Kang stopped him and urged him to let his clone grab it, warning it might be cursed. Edgar asked if he could still use it. Mr. Kang explained that cursed items are incredibly rare. Depending on its actual value, Edgar could easily fetch several hundred million won for it. He also noted that since Edgar took down a tough D-rank monster, a massive payday was guaranteed. So Edgar stopped hunting, but something else caught his attention. And he asked Mr. Kang if the strange object from the monster's head was worth anything. That's when Edgar pulled a glowing, crystal-shaped object right out of his pocket. Mr. Kang's jaw dropped in complete shock. He knew exactly what that thing was, a low-level crystal. And honestly, this crystal was complete trash. You couldn't even sell it for pocket change. Yet Edgar looked so incredibly pleased with himself that Mr. Kang found it pretty hard to break the bad news. So the agent gently explained that it was just a cheap stat-boosting item, but warned that humans couldn't safely use it because it had way too many side effects, which is why the market price was so low, but Mr. Kang quickly added that the rest of the monster loot would sell for a fortune, meaning Edgar had no reason to worry. Cheered up, the boy happily said he would leave the liquidation to the support team. Soon after, Edgar finally headed home, feeling completely drained from today's crazy events. He dismissed his clones, telling them they could rest for now. Then Edgar decided it was time to summon clone number 3. He activated his skill and a brand new figure materialized right in front of him. As soon as the clone appeared, Edgar ordered him to gear up and start training immediately. He then sat down on his bed to closely examine the loot he had brought back with him. As a result, he was holding that low-level crystal and the mysterious blood-absorbing sword. Edgar searched online and found out the crystal was actually a crystal of power. It stated that while it was completely useless for humans, it could be used on familiars, though it triggers monsterization. Getting a .005 strength boost seemed incredibly tempting, but that monsterization risk was a massive red flag. Usually his clone's negative status effects, like hunger and severe injuries, never affected Edgar directly, but what if monsterization bypassed that safe rule? The thought terrified him. Edgar suddenly imagined his own head turning into a monstrous dragon and Mr. Kang shooting him dead out of sheer terror, shaking his head. He quickly decided to shelve that idea. Next, Edgar decided to examine the strange weapon. He remembered the agent's strict warnings that the blade might be heavily cursed. The support team had delivered the case, and although his clone carried it, nothing weird had happened yet. Still, he needed to be careful. He could get a lot of cash for it, but Edgar decides to use it first and sell it later. He orders clone number 2 to grab the sword, and the clone obeys his master immediately. Edgar watches closely, expecting some kind of reaction. When the double grabs the hilt, but a few quiet seconds pass with zero change. Clone number 2 simply mentions hearing a strange noise. Edgar decides to check it out. Himself activating his familiar skill, instantly an intense, suffocating bloodlust hits him. As the cursed sword begs him to kill, the overwhelming whispers are far too loud, so he quickly shuts off the skill. He realizes the blade had no real physical grip on his clone. Still, he can't help but wonder if holding it directly himself would have completely warped his mind. He decides to let number 2 keep using it for now. Suddenly, a system window pops up right next to the weapon with an alert showing his regeneration rate just got a massive boost. He figures that the blade has a passive healing buff. The next day, he plans to keep clearing out more monster zones, but he quickly realizes he has a major problem. His shadow team is completely exhausted, so he tells his clones that today is a rest day to meditate and focus on unlocking their mana breath. Once he leaves tomorrow, they will have to practice it on their own. Edgar closes his eyes and triggers his meditation skill. He'll be gone soon, since university classes are starting up again. Next up, we find ourselves near Jianguk University. For Edgar, it feels like his entire break vanished in a flash. That's what happens when you spend every single waking hour grinding for raw power. His clones didn't take a single day off to boost his stats. Now back on campus, a certain awkward silence bugs him. Nobody is greeting him, and everyone he passes is actively avoiding his gaze. They are pretending he doesn't exist, but once he enters the classroom, he runs straight into his buddy Ryan, who looks completely stunned to see him. Ryan explains he only registered because this class practically guarantees easy grades. Edgar can barely believe his lazy friend actually cares about his GPA now. As they chat about working out, they notice some weird vibes in the room. Their classmates are staring at them, whispering in absolute disbelief. No one can believe this handsome guy is actually the formerly chubby Edgar Williams. The gossip spreads like wildfire as people try to figure out his identity. Ryan chuckles, pointing out that Edgar is suddenly the center of attention. Edgar blinks, gesturing to himself, and asking if his glow-up is really that extreme. Ryan laughs. He's changed so much his own parents wouldn't even know him. He admits he almost walked right past him without realizing who it was. He suggests they gather the old gang to celebrate the new semester with drinks. But Edgar immediately shoots down the idea, mentioning he already has plans. Wait, since when does Edgar have a social life? Ryan is stunned as Edgar explains he has an important appointment he can't break. Ryan immediately assumes his friend scored a hot date on the very first day. Talk about an absolute betrayal. Edgar tries to explain himself, but Ryan Waves it off, he laughs, telling him there is absolutely no need to explain. Because their other friends heard the whole thing, Edgar turns to see Charlie and Chase. Standing right there, wearing smirks, they mockingly promise they will never let him forget this. But a professor stepping in suddenly cuts their duel short. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the World Association of Hunters headquarters. Countless agents are currently working day and night to preserve peace. They monitor global safety and even foresee disasters. A panicked staffer reports that the Oracle has predicted one. The association chief, Michael Harris, immediately demands to hear all the details. A massive portal is about to unleash hundreds of giant monsters. Michael asks if they can pinpoint when this portal will appear. The technician responds that the situation is far worse than they feared. The beasts are rated up to rank A, meaning extreme danger is imminent. Worse yet, their calculations show that the gate is set to open very soon. And get this, the predicted ground zero for this horror is the Korean peninsula. Specifically South Korea. Devon Moore, leader of the third-ranked Kane's Guild, is rushing to a major meeting, totally blind to the situation. Along the way, he crosses paths with the 6th guild leader, Yolo Han Miho. Devon is pretty annoyed by the run-in, but he still acts calm. He calmly greets Miho, noting it has been quite a while since they last spoke. She remarks that things must be incredibly dire if they summon the third chief. Devon nods, agreeing that a massive crisis must be unfolding right now. Miho points out his new beard, teasingly asking if he grew it just for her. To her disappointment, Devon replies that he has just been way too busy. The two leaders finally enter the room, where all the top hunters have gathered. Hong, the notoriously arrogant leader of the first guild, spots them immediately. Beside him, Mike Hyun smugly announces Devon's arrival to the entire room. Like almost everyone else in the room, Miho absolutely detests him. Devon flatly asks what he wants from him this time. But Mike notes that Devon could have at least greeted him first before complaining. Devon threatens to leave immediately if there are no assignments for him. But he is cut off, completely frozen when he hears about the Tower of Odin. Mike casually recalls sending the first Kane's Guild capture team there recently. He is clearly eager to know if their high-stakes dungeon sweep was successful. Since much time has passed with absolutely zero updates, Dan White speaks up. The leader of the second-ranked Teen Guild sternly warns Mike not to cross the line. Talk about an awkward silence. This response tells Mike the raid failed. He makes a fake apology, mockingly claiming his memory has been pretty terrible lately. These insulting, sarcastic words only fuel the quiet rage of the third guild leader. Miho watches him closely, quietly growing more and more worried for her close friend. Just then Ram, head of the Korean Association, finally steps inside. He immediately senses the lethal tension between the first and third guild chiefs. The heavy silence makes it pretty obvious that a clash almost broke out. Everyone else is on edge too, confirming his suspicions that trouble is brewing. Clearing the air, the president warmly thanks everyone for answering this urgent call. He drops the bomb. The global headquarters has sent a dire warning. An unprecedented, nation-level catastrophe is heading straight for South Korea. Mike Hyun instantly realizes this must be the Oracle's predicted disaster. Mike Hyun figured this entire high-stakes situation had to be about the legendary Oracle. Reports of a massive rank a portal, a looming monster invasion. This disaster is too big. Oram needs help from the guilds. He wants cooperation, but one leader demands to know the details. When and where will it open? The association head has nothing. No details yet except that it is Korea, Dan White sighs. He knows what is coming. They will suggest surrounding the peninsula. Just standing there like idiots waiting, but Oram wants a plan. They need real discussion. Right now, they only know it is soon. But how exactly do you stop a massive catastrophe when everything is completely unknown? They do not even have enough active hunters on standby for normal raids. Naturally, they ask about money, who pays for this defense duty. Oram acts vague. Fortunately, a prominent guild master steps in. Mr. Connies has a suggestion. Devon Moore wants rapid response teams, patrolling their own local neighborhoods while keeping on high alert. This keeps them ready. The absolute second the gate opens, they must deploy there. No excuses. Every guild must send their entire force immediately. Anyone who refuses this call will face incredibly heavy punishment. The association chairman loves this. He calls for a vote. It is a highly practical decision. most guilds already patrol their own bases. Hands start going up. Han Miho, leader of the 6th Guild, immediately raises her hand, even the stubborn head of the rival Hong Guild agrees with the plan, unanimous. The happy chairman takes the floor. He officially adopts the strategy proposed by Chairman Devon Moore. He hopes they will protect their territories and cooperate closely. They must stand together. Now the action shifts over to university grounds. Welcome to Gongguk University. The first day of class flies by. Edgar is walking home afterward, but he notices something strange. Erica is cornered by a random guy, looking completely and utterly uncomfortable. The persistent stranger is aggressively begging the girl for her number. She claims she has a boyfriend, but he keeps pushing. Seeing this, Edgar steps up and asks what is going on. Erica did not expect her teacher here, but she immediately takes control. She decides to pretend he is her boyfriend. Edgar is shocked. She looks up, calling him dear, complaining that she has waited so long. She grabs his elbow tightly, dragging him away. Above them, the evening sky shifts. The colors turn to twilight. Erica quickly explains her trick. She hated the idea of giving that creep her number, so she grabbed Edgar and ran, since she already claimed she had a boyfriend. She does not want Edgar to misunderstand. She is completely single. Edgar smiles. He asks why she wanted to eat meat today. She replies that it is actually the anniversary of the school opening. Finally, Edgar understands why she is wearing such nice, casual clothes. Seeing him stare, she playfully offers to give the handsome teacher her number. But he already has it. Just then, he suddenly receives a notification. Edgar already had her personal number, so there was zero need for that. A ping from Mr. Blake reveals that the advance is paid and the deal is locked. The payout for the dungeon loot is secured. Edgar is stunned they already made back 50 million, proving his cloning skill is an absolute cheat. Thrilled, Edgar tells Erica she can go ahead and choose the most expensive dish. He reassures her that she does not need to worry about money at all. The two wind up grabbing a table at a premium Korean barbecue place. They pick out the finest cut on the menu and start grilling. Erica admits the meat is absolutely heavenly, but she cannot shake her worry about how expensive everything is. Edgar just laughs and tells her to relax. He tells her to forget the bill, admitting he still feels bad about her getting hurt before. She's genuinely touched to see her teacher care so much. Right then, Edgar waves over the staff and orders 4 more massive portions. Everything seems totally normal in the lively diner, with plenty of other folks eating and laughing, just an ordinary day, or so they think. Out of nowhere, the television broadcast cuts to black. A warning alert flashes. An emergency warning blares, notifying everyone of an active portal outbreak nearby. The anchor announces a level 1 threat covering all of Korea. This is not a test. Every single citizen must immediately seek underground shelter. Meanwhile, some classmates are trying to calm Ruben down, but the guy is convinced that while they are stuck in traffic, Edgar is living it up. Chase tells Ryan there is no way Edgar is actually out on a romantic date, but then they look through the restaurant window and freeze. There sits Edgar, laughing and having a blast with a gorgeous girl. The sight makes Chase absolutely boil with jealousy, ready to snap. Just then, their phones buzz with an identical, heavy vibration. Ryan pulls out his device to see what on earth is going on. His face goes completely pale as he delivers the terrible news. The entire web is exploding with warnings about an unprecedented portal collapse. Charlie points out how strange it is that everything is still quiet outside. Before they can process this, Edgar steps out of the front entrance. He spots his classmates standing there, with Erica following close behind. Edgar asks what they are up to. Charlie admits they saw them. Ryan immediately speaks up, asking if that pretty girl behind him is his new girlfriend. Erica turns bright red, but Edgar quickly shuts down the rumor. He explains she is his student who saved him, so he is treating her. He introduces Ryan, Chase, and Charlie to her as his school friends. Erica politely bows and greets them with a charming smile. Since they did not finish eating, Edgar asks the staff to bag up their food. He hands her the takeout bag, telling her to enjoy the premium beef with her family. Erica happily accepts, thanking her teacher deeply for such an amazing and generous gesture. He urges her to head home immediately so her family does not get sick with worry. His friends watch, fully convinced of his noble teacher routine. She asks him if their lessons are officially over for today. Edgar nods, warning her that wandering the streets during a crisis is a terrible idea. Even his classmates have to admit that he is acting like a total bore. Edgar snapped. He shouted that the situation was dangerous, ordering everyone to leave. Seriously, why were his friends acting so carefree? It made no sense. Nearby, a loud group of drunks was already planning their next party stop. Was he really the only one reacting so sharply to everything? Everything seemed business as usual. It was completely baffling. Shaken, Edgar decided to call his agent, asking if he'd heard the alarm. Con Blake admitted he was just about to contact Edgar regarding that alarm. This was top secret, but the association planned to report the threat. For at least 3 months, pinpointing the exact gate location was still impossible. But they knew A-rank beasts would soon pour out of the rift. Massive casualties were guaranteed. Edgar demanded to know why they weren't warning people. Why not push for an emergency evacuation to safe shelters? Con Blake explained that halting normal business operations would cause massive financial ruin. A total 3-month shutdown would completely devastate the local industries. Because of that, the public would blame the association for the financial wreckage. So they kept the warnings incredibly quiet. He also noted that local hunting zones were locked down on an emergency basis, meaning they couldn't hunt anymore. Con even offered to help get Edgar's family to a secure bunker. That evening, Edgar returned to his apartment, immediately checking on his clones. Clone number 2 said he was mostly fine, while number 1 muttered that he was barely hanging on. Number 2 had almost fully recovered, but number 1's deep, critical wounds just weren't healing on their own. Pulling up his active hunter interface, Edgar saw the clone summon cooldown was finally over. He could summon clone number 3 now, but first, he recalled number 1. Resetting him this way worked magic. The clone's condition improved instantly. Edgar handed him a simple baseball cap so he could easily tell them apart. Then, number 3 walked in, looking completely fresh from a heavy workout. Together at last, Edgar announced it was finally time to head home. 3 months had passed since he left. He nervously knocked on the front door, calling out that he was back. His mother opened it, but she just stared blankly, unable to recognize the boy standing there. Pure awkwardness. She genuinely didn't know who she was looking at. She squinted, hesitantly asking if this stranger was really her son Edgar. He nodded. She gasped, immediately asking why on earth he had lost so much weight. Terrified he was starving, his father walked up. Stunned by his son's physical change, Sister Freya was instantly thrilled to hear her brother was back, complaining that he should have visited her first. She stepped closer to playfully grill him, but as she looked at him, her face completely froze. She was not remotely prepared for how different her brother looked now. Freya blinked in total disbelief, asking him who he actually was. Edgar remembered Ryan warning him that his own parents wouldn't know him and realized he was absolutely right. Then his mother realized that he hadn't arrived alone, asking why his tag-along friends were wearing masks. Edgar chuckled. They weren't his buddies. He instructed the clones to unmask. What met their eyes was an absolute mind-blower. They couldn't believe it. They can't wrap their heads around why all 4 boys look completely identical. Edgar quickly steps in. He tries to calm them down, promising to explain. He tells them that a few months back he joined an awakening program, and his special skill is cloning. His mother knew most kids were doing this, but she never imagined her own son would. Freya, on the other hand, is dying to sign up the moment she gets the chance. His father looks at him, asking if he is officially a hunter. Edgar looks away. Admitting that he was not going to keep it a secret, his mother panics. Asking if it is too dangerous, Edgar quickly tells her there is no risk, because his clones are the ones out there doing all the real work. Suddenly, he remembers the red alert and warns his family they need to pack up. They have to head to the shelter right now, but his dad shakes his head. Sure, they have some bags packed just in case, but they want to wait. They need to see how things play out, plus he has work in the morning. So they cannot just run. Edgar realizes how painfully naive his parents are. They do not understand the absolute nightmare that is coming for them right now. If the association had just warned everyone about the real scale of this threat, people would actually take it seriously, but Edgar decides to drop the argument. He tells them he is moving back home because the university canceled all classes, which is a flat-out lie. He just cannot leave them unprotected in times like this. Since he cannot drag them to a shelter, he will stand guard himself. He pulls out a bag of premium meat, offering to cook a nice family dinner. Freya squeals with joy seeing the high-grade Korean beef her brother brought along. His father tells his wife to grab some side dishes, seeing them like this. Edgar deeply regrets not coming home sooner. Even the clones are thrilled when his mom asks if they also want to eat. Edgar nods but admits he cannot waste good beef on them. They only get plain white rice. Still, the parents whip up a massive, mouth-watering feast. The clones, however, stare at their sad bowls of plain rice with pure disappointment. His mother calls everyone to dig in, wishing them a great meal. Freya teases Edgar, asking if all this eating will make him gain weight again. He laughs it off. His mom softly smiles, noting how long it has been since they all sat down together. Edgar agrees, it really has been forever. And just like that, absolute chaos. Debris violently explodes into their living room. Slowly, Edgar blinks his eyes open. He is surrounded by shattered stone. His head is spinning. He cannot process what just hit them. Groaning in pain, he struggles to stand, clutching his throbbing forehead. Then, horror sets in. Their apartment wall is completely obliterated, revealing the outside. The upper floors are gone, ripped apart by colossal beasts pouring out of a massive portal. The city is a burning war zone, crumbling under their wrath. A towering monster spews a relentless torrent of flame, incinerating everything. Edgar never thought a portal would open this close to their building. Terrified, he spins around, desperately calling for his parents and his sister. Underneath the rubble, he sees clone number 1 draped over them. His clone had used his own body as a shield. Then, Edgar hears a shifting sound nearby. Clones number 2 and 3 are also pushing. He dragged himself out from the debris. Number 3 lost an arm but stopped his own. Bleeding, number 1 was pulverized. Number 3 was in terrible shape. An open portal. Edgar never expected this nightmare so soon. His mother slowly started to stand up. His confused family had no clue what was happening. So Edgar made it clear they had to get out of there right away. His father was panicking because their apartment wall was completely shattered. But Edgar told him there was zero time to worry about real estate. A much bigger crisis was unfolding. The monster gate was officially active. Buildings collapsed everywhere. Vicious beasts hunted down the screaming citizens who failed to escape. In time, many survivors were buried alive under the falling concrete. Shocked residents were slaughtered one by one. The nightmare was just beginning. Monsters kept pouring out of the rift. Meanwhile, the family packed up. Edgar urgently asked Freya if she had finished putting on her armor. He handed her the protective gear from number 1, even though it was a bit too loose. The young girl worried about her brother's summons. But Edgar reassured her number 3 was tough as nails and would easily survive. Suddenly, a massive creature plummeted straight out of the sky to the ground. The heavy impact kicked up a blinding storm of dust and debris. It lay broken on the pavement. Edgar wondered why it randomly fell. More beasts began dropping like flies, meaning the portal was high up. The rift must have opened in midair, killing many weaker creatures on impact. Freya tried desperately to yank the front door open but failed. The heavy lock was jammed tight. Edgar quickly asked his father for a baseball bat. Right after catching it, he activated his powerful punch skill. He swung hard, smashing the door handle. The force of the strike snapped it clean off. Then Edgar completely shattered the door using his bare left hand. His family watched in absolute, jaw-dropping shock. With their exit cleared, Edgar urged them to start moving immediately. But outside, another disappointment waited. Every single car was completely destroyed. Escaping by vehicle was impossible. Edgar asked where the nearest shelter was, and his father replied that it was 2 kilometers away, out on the streets. Heaps of surviving monsters were already roaming the area. They were terrifyingly diverse. Edgar seriously doubted they could make it through 2 kilometers of this madness on foot. But then, Freya suggested they go down to the basement, since there were temporary underground shelters. There, Edgar had no idea a shelter existed right below them. He immediately ordered everyone to descend as quickly as possible, but right as he prepared to follow, blood-curdling screams stopped him dead. A neighboring man was pinned under building debris, begging for rescue. But get this, a far more terrifying threat was creeping up behind him. The massive beast that fell from the sky was starting to rise. The pinned survivor turned and froze in sheer panic. A giant D-rank troll emerged from the ruins. Edgar's father immediately recognized the danger. He warned his son to think rationally, they could not save him. He warned the guy to start thinking rationally because they simply could not help him. Edgar's father calmly told his son to head downstairs with them, but Edgar realized something. Number 3 was too badly injured to fight at full strength, meaning he was useless. And there was no way Number 2 could rescue that trapped man alone, plus, right now. He could not even use his familiar skills. If he dies, it is for real. But he still refused to leave it like that. His mother asked what happened, begging him to come downstairs as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the poor man, pinned under the stalls, screamed in sheer terror. Edgar's mind raced with doubts. He told his family to lock the door tightly and wait for his return. Commanding Number 2 to follow him out, he ordered Number 3 to protect his family to the very end, but Freya absolutely hated this plan. It was way too dangerous outside, and she was terrified for her brother. His father asked if his mind was truly made up. Edgar gave a firm nod, stating he had no choice. He was a hunter after all. He grabbed his dad's bat and rushed to save the man. Freya yanked her arm away from Number 3, who was trying to hold her back. She refused to let her brother die. But when the land is crawling with monsters, a hunter has no time to delay. Edgar charged at the beast, slamming his bat straight into its mouth. If he is going to call himself a hunter, he has to slay beasts. The massive troll roared in fury from the painful strike. Edgar quickly ordered Number 2 to drag the trapped man out, pointing a finger at the beast. He commanded a strike. Edgar stood entirely calm before the towering monster, who gripped a massive club of his own. Meanwhile, another beast watched from afar, hearing the young hunter order his clone to strike. Meanwhile, Number 2 rushed to assist the trapped victim. Once freed, the man muttered a weak thanks and limped off. The troll glared down at Edgar, its hideous face twisted in rage. Edgar hated just how massive this thing was. He commanded Number 2 to arm himself. They had to throw absolutely everything they had at this giant. There was no room left for hesitation. Edgar pulled out a low-level monster crystal from his pocket, ordering his clone to swallow it down. Number 2 instantly obeyed, crushing the crystal. In his teeth, instantly, his entire body began to warp and transform, shifting in color and shape. Edgar saw that this process was clearly causing Number 2 immense pain. Now, the clone resembled a savage humanoid monster. Edgar quietly asked Number 2 if he was still loyal. The clone nodded. The troll, realizing the clone had transformed, tried communicating with him. But Edgar mocked the beast. Its efforts were totally useless now. Because the clone belonged to him, Edgar let out a quiet sigh of relief. Aside from physical changes, this monster state did not affect their bond. Edgar smiled, and trust me, this is where the real hunt begins. The towering giant readied his massive club, lifting it high into the air. He swung the heavy weapon directly at Edgar, shattering the ground beneath him. Shards of stone flew everywhere, but the young hunter deflected them with ease. The troll lunged forward, stretching out a massive hand to crush the boy. But Number 2 instantly intercepted the attack, moving like a shadow. He swung his blade, severing the monster's massive arm. Edgar was thoroughly impressed. With the raw cutting power of that sword, the giant shrieked in agony. Pain in its newly wounded limb, the beast swung, sending debris flying everywhere. Edgar noticed that this opponent was much slower than the fishman. He leaped forward, aiming directly for its mouth. But the giant spotted him, immediately covering up to protect itself. Edgar simply could not understand how the monster's severed arm had already grown back completely. Suddenly reappeared, but with one sweep of that restored limb, the troll threw him back. Edgar never expected the beast to regenerate at such an insanely high rate. Its skin was actually pretty fragile and quite easy to slice through. But the real problem was that the monster regenerated way too fast. Gradual damage was completely useless here. Edgar yelled to clone Number 2 to make the monster tilt its head. The clone heard his master's order and immediately swung his blade right at the giant troll to force it down. He sliced right through the monster's lower leg, causing it to buckle instantly. The leg fell and the monster bent down, giving Edgar a perfect shot. He seized the chance and shot the beast straight in the eye. Even with its healing ability, it would be blinded for a short time. The mutated clone then swiftly sliced off the creature's second leg. Now completely legless, the massive troll fell heavily to the ground. Its blinded eyes gradually began to recover, quickly restoring the beast's vision. But right in front of him stood Edgar, ready with a powerful punch. Finding the perfect angle, he swung his bat directly into the enemy's face. The devastating strike landed hard, smashing the giant backward onto the rubble. Immediately after landing that massive blow, all of the guy's stats skyrocketed. But a few seconds later, a sharp pain shot through his right arm. It was a side effect of that massive punch, which made perfect sense. He realized this beast was easily on par with those fish monsters. He stood up and told clone number 2 to hurry directly to the shelter. Their family would be worried. Edgar searched but could not find his phone. He probably dropped it in the fight, so he borrowed the clone's. He also scolded his clone, warning him about his monstrous appearance. With a look like that, they would never let him into the basement. The brief smile on Edgar's face faded instantly as a loud roar echoed. So many people still needed saving, and this terrible threat was far from over. Things were spiraling out of control as the entire city came under attack. Association fighter jets scrambled, desperately rushing toward the newly active portals. An incredibly colossal monster was now roaming through the ruined neighborhood. With just one giant step, it flattened everything in its path. This terrifying beast was actually the size of a legendary dragon. It gathered intense fire in its throat, ready to incinerate everything. But wait, humanity is not letting this monster run wild unchecked. Local hunters rushed to the scene, led by the 9th-ranked guild, Red Flame. Their commander immediately went to work, ordering his squad to aim for its head. The commander of the 7th-ranked guild, Scorpion, was not about to lose. He ordered his members to outshine the others and show their true power. Every single scale they ripped off was worth months of salary. Just imagine every single ripped scale as several months of solid hunter salary. Hunters surrounded the dragon-like beast from all sides, while the Can's guild rushed in. Fighter jets roared toward the crash site as the pilot announced their arrival. They reached the target, preparing to open the drop hatch. On board was the leader of the nation's 3rd strongest guild, Devon Moore, as they hit the drop zone. Devon ordered his team to prepare for drop-off, but aerial monsters spotted them first. A swarm of bird-like beasts immediately swarmed the jet, but the squad was prepared. These aircraft were armed to the teeth for exactly this kind of situation. A heavy barrage of bullets tore right through the advancing flying beast. A hunter reported that the Megalosaurus was finally pulling back. Devon noted other guilds had already arrived, so they could handle the beast. No distractions, he ordered his squad to focus entirely on saving survivors. Down below, elite hunters clashed with high-ranking beasts, but some were slacking. A few scavengers were acting in bad faith, looting valuables from the dead. Devon Moore watched these vultures with absolute disgust, and honestly, who can blame him? His coordinator reported survivors huddled about 700 meters to the northeast. Devon acknowledged the coordinates, nodding to his partner as they prepared to move. Activating his sensory skill, Devon quickly scanned the area for human heat signatures. He spotted 2 hunters putting up a pretty desperate defense to shield survivors. But Devon saw they were heavily outnumbered, facing an endless wave of beasts. The guild leader announced he was heading northeast immediately to bail them out. He ordered his squad to split up and launch a full-scale sweep. Devon leaped from the transport, diving straight toward the target zone. Meanwhile, Edgar intended to regroup once he finished off the massive beast blocking his path, but suddenly a pack of goblin-like monsters blocked his path, trapping them completely. Edgar refused to abandon the helpless civilians, yelling for them to take cover. But the way to the shelter was cut off by another squad of beasts. Edgar ordered number 2 to clear out the enemies behind them immediately. A bloodthirsty goblin lunged at a terrified civilian, but number 2 intercepted it. He quickly neutralized the threat, while Edgar kept firing his heavy pistol. That last shot took everything. His weapon was useless as another huge monster burst out from the rubble. Edgar prayed the beast would stay asleep. The creature slammed its glowing beacon into the shattered pavement with immense force. A bizarre mist-like substance began spraying, quickly filling up the entire alleyway. This highly flammable gas was about to cause Edgar a massive headache. A sudden hail of bullets flew directly at the defenseless city residents. Yet the brave hunters refused to back down. Number 2 jumped forward. He used his own body to shield the survivors from the toxic spray. Putting his life on the line, he protected them until Edgar noticed his limit. Just as the bird beast prepared to spray more gas, someone intervened. The beast's skull was crushed instantly under the massive paw of a new arrival. An enormous tiger-like beast stepped forward, casting a shadow over Edgar. Even the nearby goblins trembled in absolute terror at its mere presence. This strange reaction caught Edgar off guard as he stared at the giant paw. He braced for the worst, but get this, the strike never came. Edgar waited in terror for the giant tiger to shred him, but nothing happened. He survived, cracking his eyes open. The young man finds a stranger right over him. With a brutal swing of his blade, this new hunter decapitates a massive beast. The nearby civilians gasp. No one saw this level of savior coming. Who is he? Devon Moore. He turns around, asking if everyone is all right. Edgar just stares. Shock paralyzes him. The man explains he is a guild hunter. Heart of the Can's guild. Cut to the emergency shelter beneath Edgar's house. Neighbors squirm in discomfort. Freya is screaming at her brother's clone. Honestly, most of them are sick of her constant dramatic scenes. She shrieks at number 3, "Let me out, I have to save him." But the clone is a machine. Edgar's direct orders are completely absolute. She sneers, "If you have his powers, why aren't you helping him?" The clone's voice is deadpan. "My instructions are clear, I follow orders." Her father finally steps in, begging her to stop causing a panic. Freya turns on him. "How can you stay so calm during this?" He nods. It's suicide out there, but he has a point. If this clone is standing and perfectly fine, then Edgar is alive too. He recalls Edgar breaking down the door. They have to trust him. The boy wasn't lying about being a hunter. We must believe in him. Acting on pure emotion now will only make things worse, he warns. Going out there only adds to his problems. We have to wait. Freya slumps. He's right. Suddenly, a heavy thud echoes from the entrance. Desperate scratching. Someone is right outside the heavy steel vault doors. A muffled human voice begs for help. Freya instantly gasps, "Edgar." But her father shakes his head. That's definitely not their boy. A neighbor, someone whispers, "We should let them in. They are trapped." But the security monitor is completely dark. They can't see a thing. Louise Williams gasps, "What if it's the survivor Edgar saved earlier?" Freya scrambles to open it. Then she spots another shadow on screen. Two shapes. It has to be her brother. It must be him. Hands shaking, Freya punches in the passcode and releases the lock. She desperately prays to see Edgar, but instead, pure nightmare fuel. A bloody, mutilated corpse slumps forward into the open doorway. Terror. A massive monster stands behind it, mimicking a human cry for help. Freya's throat locks up. The beast is holding the dead body tight. It's the man Edgar saved. With a wet rip, the beast shreds him. A B-rank terror, the screeching dragonfly, crawls directly inside. It repeats the dead man's cries, using his voice like a tape. Panic erupts. Frightened civilians scream and scatter like trapped rats. Freya is paralyzed, but clone number 1 leaps forward to shield her. He drives his blade straight at the monster's compound eyes. But the beast is lightning fast. It bats his weapon aside. A razor-sharp leg swings. A massive claw slams into his chest. Blood sprays from his mouth. The appendage drives right through him. The claw skewers them both, tearing right through Freya's stomach behind him. Warm blood wells up in her throat. Everything fades to black. Her vision faded, and she collapsed heavily onto the hard ground. Completely exhausted, still, Edgar's clone refused to give up, raising his weapon and firing. He shot the sensor near the doorway, triggering an alarm for critical structural damage. Thanks to this system error, the facility began automatically sealing the heavy entrance. As they sealed, number 1 lunged forward to shove the massive monster back. He needed to trap himself with the beast, just to buy some extra time. Moments later, the shelter's heavy entrance slammed shut. Then Devon Moore stepped forward. He apologized to the survivors for arriving late, which made Edgar recognize him. He ran the local awakening program, but Edgar never expected Devon to be this powerful. He was a ridiculously strong hunter. Recovering from shock, Edgar introduced himself. He offered a firm handshake, thanking the powerful man for saving their lives. Devon humbly brushed it off, admitting he watched Edgar protect everyone until the end. He praised the kid for standing his ground instead of running for safety. He could have abandoned them to save himself, yet he chose to stay and fight. Under such extreme pressure, most people's morals shatter, but not his. Edgar did the exact opposite, showing a level of courage that truly impressed Devon. Edgar offered a shy thank you, his spirits instantly lifting from the compliment. The warm praise felt so good that he almost let his guard down completely. Meanwhile, Devon thought back to the moment he arrived at the chaotic battlefield. He had spotted a young hunter throwing his own body in harm's way to shield civilians. The guild leader feared the kid wouldn't make it through that brutal clash. But when the dust settled, only empty clothes remained on the ground, the hunter gone. But wait, just when they thought it was over, another beast charges. Devon saw the creature lunging toward Edgar and moved like lightning. He still wondered about that strange warrior who dissolved into pure mana. He asked Edgar point-blank if he was actually a registered hunter. Edgar nodded, admitting he had only recently awakened and joined the ranks. The guild leader then curiously asked him what his specific ability was. Edgar realized there was no point hiding his special powers from his savior. He opened his mouth to explain, but a sudden, bizarre sensation struck him. A chill ran through him. His link with number 3 was broken. Gripping his sword tightly, he quickly apologized to the powerful hunter. He urgently explained that his family was in danger and bolted toward the shelter. Devon yelled after him, warning that going alone was incredibly dangerous. He quickly ordered the nearby rescue squad to secure the coordinates and aid survivors. He also noticed the massive, swirling portal was still wide open. Meanwhile, Edgar sprinted with everything he had, desperate to reach his home. Sensing his rising anger, the strange sword reacted with intense bloodlust. Edgar silently snarled at the weapon to shut up and stay quiet. He activated his run ability, accelerating into a massive burst of speed. On the other side of town, a desperate battle was still raging. A hunter conjured a massive fireball, launching it straight at the megalosaurus. A blazing stream of fire slammed directly into the creature, scorching its skin. His partner yelled that they only needed a few more hits to win. But before he could finish, the monster's massive paw crushed him instantly. The support squad had to scatter even further since the blast radius was simply too massive. A warrior from a rival guild lunged at the gargantuan beast with his blade. But its thick shell proved far too strong to inject any of his lethal poison. The master of the Red Flame Guild shouted that this was no time for petty rivalries. Demanding they join forces, right before a smug voice spoke up from behind them. The voice mockingly asked what they wanted to combine, belonging to none other than Mike. Hyun, who told the hunters that there was a mountain of gold sitting right before them. Yet absolutely nobody was claiming it, so he stepped in. He told the men that there were certain things they would never understand in their entire lifetimes. Then Mike began to activate his skill, making the entire area shimmer with dazzling, brilliant colors. The guild leaders stood absolutely paralyzed with shock. Mike casually declared that truth is power and does not need weak team-ups. Meanwhile, Edgar's father frantically called out for a medical kit. Desperate, the father begged Freya to stay awake. Freya whimpered softly that she was in so much pain, terrified. Louisa, clutching a bandage with shaking hands, begged her little girl to hold on just a little longer. Right as a massive, thundering noise began to rattle the front entrance. The screeching dragonfly monster sliced the heavy vault door clean in half. The terrified refugees froze, completely paralyzed by the sheer terror radiating from the beast, with tears streaming down her eyes. Freya begged her parents to run, the B-rank beast rasped out words, trying to mimic a human voice again, but Louisa and Oliver had absolutely no intention of leaving their daughter behind. Freya's mother fought to hold back her endless stream of tears, but right then, Edgar finally burst into the underground shelter. He stared down the monster with absolute fury in his eyes. His relieved father cried tears of joy seeing Edgar alive, but then the boy's body began transforming. The panicked refugees prayed this strange hunter had come to save them, but Edgar only looked toward his parents. Seeing their utter despair, spotting his sister lying limp and unconscious on the ground, for a second, Edgar's face froze, but seeing his injured little sister, he snapped with absolute blinding rage. He swung his sword at the screeching dragonfly, and Edgar Williams managed to sever one of its massive limbs. But the beast retaliated, tearing deep into Edgar's shoulder, in its vile, guttural voice. It kept raspy whispering Freya's name. The heavy flow of his blood only seemed to make his blazing sword flare even brighter. The massive shockwave and his agonizing wound took a devastating toll on Edgar's body, yet he swung his weapon again, charging the screeching dragonfly. The monster raised a sharp claw directly toward him, ready to strike. The beast almost reached the furious Edgar when, out of nowhere, an unfamiliar woman grabbed the boy and snatched him away. It was the leader of the country's third-ranked guild, arriving just in time to rescue Edgar. The creature let out a disgusting, ear-splitting screech. The young woman smirked, glad she was fast enough to catch Edgar Devon Moore delivered a cold, swift strike at the screeching dragonfly, but the beast narrowly dodged her lethal blow, leaping back at the very last second. Devon's assistant immediately spotted the horrific, bloody wound on Edgar's shoulder. The boy let out unsettling groans, making the assistant wonder if he had completely lost his mind. The huntress activated her mana transfer skill, telling the exhausted boy to shut his eyes and rest. She placed a seal, instantly halting the terrifying monsterization process taking over Edgar's body. Devon asks his teammate how the guy is holding up. Murable says he is in pretty bad shape, urging him to hunt down the monster fast. Just then Edgar barely opens his eyes, trying to speak. Murable quickly warns him to stay quiet so his wounds do not reopen. But Devon catches Edgar muttering about his injured sister. The dying boy reaches out, gripping Murable's hands as he tearfully begs the hunters to save her. Devon Moore kneels, telling him not to worry. Right then, a screeching dragonfly monster screams through the entire building. Still, Devon makes a promise. To the boy, neither he nor his sister is dying today. He tells Edgar to rest, promising that it will all be over soon. Meanwhile, Oram sits quietly at his desk in the Grand Association headquarters. The chairman carefully reviews the rising evacuation requests and the portal's massive damage reports. Flashback to the day of the major guild leader meeting. The secretary asks the chief if they should sound the disaster alert once preparations are complete. Out in the hallway, Oram is cornered by the nation's top guild leader. Mike Hyun stops him, saying he needs a quick private word. The secretary bristles at his incredibly rude and abrupt manner, but the association chief waves it off, calmly asking Mike Hyun what is on his mind. Mike requests they send the secretary away, claiming this is a highly sensitive topic. Oram silently signals his assistant to step out of the room. Once they are alone, Mike asks if he seriously intends to issue a disaster warning. Oram nods, stating they absolutely must, as they have to reveal the scale of the invasion and order evacuations to minimize civilian deaths. Mike scoffingly asks if he is really going to throw everything out in the open. He points out the sheer chaos of announcing an incoming rank, a monster threat. It means telling the public that a threat is coming. Everyone would abandon their jobs, flee, and freeze the economy for 3 months. Mike asks the association president if he is truly prepared for the massive fallout. He warns that the furious public will blame the association for the entire mess, predicting that Oram will lose his high-ranking position within a single month. Since his guild stands to lose money too, he asks what they should do. Mike Hyun suggests a dark alternative: hide the true scale of the rank threat. By downplaying the invasion, they can shift the heavy burden of evacuation onto others. Mike adds that if he were in charge, he would keep quiet, cancel meetings, and make sure absolutely no warning sirens are sounded at all. Oram is absolutely stunned. How could anyone say something so heartless? Countless innocent people would die, but the greedy head of the Hasten Guild snaps back, arguing that a devastating crisis is actually their golden opportunity. When the portal opens and casualties skyrocket, the desperate public will value hunters more than ever. The regular military will not have enough strength to fight off the threats. Leaving everyone to beg the hunters for survival, he steps forward, getting right into the shaken president's face to deliver a cold warning. In a low, menacing voice, he makes it clear this is not a request. Oram is left entirely speechless. Cut to the news broadcast announcing that a major hunt to eliminate the Megalosaurus is actively underway. Edgar Williams happily munched chips. He demanded his clone work even harder. He scolded him. The guy was gaining muscle mass way too slowly lately. He loved his skill, zero worries. It was pure, blissful relaxation for him. He could just lie around, let the clone make money and do sports. Then a notification popped up from his agent. Time to get moving, Edgar said. He told the clone they were making cash today. Outside, Blake met them. They reached the car. Edgar immediately asked to go somewhere with horned rabbits. Blake agreed, but then looked around. Where did clone number 2 go? Edgar replied that he sent him to the gym. The agent just sighed. Training together would speed up progress. Far more efficient, Blake pointed out. But Edgar hated effort. Let the clone sweat. That was enough for him. Honestly, he only became a hunter for fun. That was his goal. Blake frowned. With this unique ability, Edgar could become the absolute best hunter. The boy just shrugged. Why bother? He had never even thought about that. He only cared about taking care of himself, nothing more. But then Blake's voice changed, cold, menacing. He asked if that was the reason. Was that why everything turned out this way? Edgar felt a sudden chill. Horror-struck, Blake stood there, his face suddenly covered in fresh blood. He pushed Edgar back violently, demanding to know if he was satisfied now. As Edgar tumbled backward, he bumped into someone, a heavy, stiff back. He turned, there lay the bloody, lifeless bodies of his entire family. His father stared. "You became a hunter and left us," he accused. Next to him, a badly wounded Freya begged for help. "Save me." Her voice was terrifying. Suddenly, dark laughter echoed from their dead lips. Gasping, Edgar finally bolted upright, waking up from the horrific nightmare. He tried to understand where he was. The dream felt too real. He breathed heavily, his body still aching from the brutal dungeon fights. Devon Moore looked at him. "Bad dream, are you okay?" he asked. He advised Edgar to rest. No physical strain, just lie back. Edgar weakly asked if Devon was the one who brought him here. He wanted to ask more, but a sharp pain shot through his shoulder. The third guild leader told him to stay calm. The wound was deep. He was in critical condition, but luckily, he survived the ordeal. Edgar sincerely thanked his savior once again, but Devon waved it off. He wanted to discuss something else, but decided to hold off for now. Right then, his worried parents heard he was finally awake and rushed inside. They were incredibly happy. Seeing them alive brought Edgar such instant peace. His mother was frantic, immediately checking him over with worried eyes. She started asking questions until Oliver told Louise to calm down. Their son just woke up after all. Then the doctor entered. He held the medical records, announcing the surgery was fully successful. He was shocked by Edgar's fast healing, normal life by next month. Edgar immediately asked how long he was out. What about the portal? Oliver answered that it had been 3 days since it opened. Fortunately, most of the massive boss monsters had already been completely defeated. But some smaller beasts were still lurking around. Edgar barely remembered the exact moment he blacked out, yet one critical detail immediately rushed back to his mind. He demanded to know what happened to Freya. But his parents and the doctor just stared at the floor in silence. A terrible dread filled Edgar as he begged them for an answer. The doctor finally spoke. They patched her physical wounds, but she had contracted the deadly mana virus from the portal beasts. This infection constantly drains the host of all their magical energy, though usually it is not fatal, since everyone has unique magic. The PM virus normally starves to death, unable to consume it. But in some rare, tragic cases, the match is flawless. The virus feeds so rapidly on the host's compatible magic that they simply cannot survive. Edgar asked weakly if there was any way to cure her, but unfortunately there is none. The parasite binds to her mana and nullifies any healing magic, meaning they can only buy time by constantly pumping raw mana into her body. Her only real hope is an S-rank healer like Blessa or a rare mandrake elixir from inside the portal. Edgar already figured those things were incredibly rare and would cost a massive fortune they simply did not have. The doctor just nodded grimly. Edgar felt complete, crushing despair. And honestly, the guilt here is real. He blamed his own pride, instead of protecting the people who actually mattered to him. He remembered his little sister, begging him in tears not to go, crying and sobbing on the floor before that vile, disgusting monster struck her down. His absolute rage made him blade again. The panicked doctor urged him to stay calm, but Edgar only felt absolute self-loathing for failing to protect his family. The doctor quickly called a nurse to help stop the heavy bleeding, pleading with him as his fresh stitches tore completely apart. He had the strength to save strangers, yet he had failed the people who mattered most. He pictured their happy, smiling faces from the day he came back. Now everything was ruined. Freya lay in a hospital bed clinging to life. Edgar drifted back into darkness, finally waking up again that evening. He lay there desperately searching for a way out when Erica stepped into the room. She quietly greeted her teacher, apologizing for dropping by unannounced. Edgar told her not to worry and asked if her family was safe. Erica explained that their home was damaged, but they made it to a shelter. Since Edgar had been completely unreachable, her father called his parents only to find out he had been hospitalized. Hearing this, Edgar realized he must have lost his phone during the chaos. He noticed her stiff, overly formal tone and gently asked her to speak more comfortably. Blushing, she agreed and wished him a speedy recovery so they could train together, but Edgar's mind was elsewhere. With his plan set, Edgar decided to let Erica know immediately, walking right up to her. He broke the news that he was dropping out of the university. 2 weeks quickly flew by. Since Edgar first woke up in his hospital bed, the doctor was absolutely stunned by how fast he recovered, finding the rapid healing rate to be completely unbelievable. The nurse even asked if all hunters healed like this, but according to the doctor, guys like Edgar were definitely a rare exception to the rule. Shrugging off his hospital gown, Edgar tossed it onto the bed, feeling pretty much back to normal. His heavy wounds were fully closed now, making him think back to a conversation he had with Erica 2 weeks ago. Back then, he had told her that he could not tutor her anymore because of his younger sister's situation. Erica did not quite know what to say, though she was clearly saddened by it. Edgar apologized once more for letting her down as a teacher, but she just smiled and told him everything was fine, thanking him warmly for all his help. She added that this did not mean they would never meet again, before shyly telling him that he would definitely regret missing out on such a beautiful student. She declared with full confidence that she would definitely get into college using everything he had taught her, adding that once she did, she would immediately find herself a boyfriend. Before heading off, she warned him that he would not get a second chance to change his mind, yet that final chat did not really weigh heavily on Edgar's mind at all. He had already mapped out his exact next steps, done with living in regret. There was simply no more room left for fear or second-guessing. Edgar hopped straight into a taxi, directing the driver to the Canes Guild headquarters. On the way, he pulled up the Hunter database to research Devon Moore. He quickly discovered that the man who saved him was actually the guild master. Soon enough, the driver pulled up to the curb, letting him know they arrived. Edgar stood before the massive Canes Guild high-rise, pushed the door open, and walked right into the main lobby, where a polite receptionist asked how she could help. Edgar explained he was there to see Devon Moore, but she immediately asked if he had a scheduled appointment. Edgar admitted the guild master had simply told him to drop by for a chat, so she prepared to give him the usual brush off about unannounced visits, but before she could finish her sentence, a voice cut in telling the receptionist to hold on. A tall gentleman stepped forward, asking if he was indeed Edgar Williams. Staring up at the towering figure, Edgar quickly confirmed his identity. The chief of staff then informed the receptionist that the young man was a personally invited guest. He offered to escort Edgar inside, gesturing for him to follow, politely explaining that the guild master was already waiting to meet with him. Word was quickly sent up to Devon that Edgar Williams had finally arrived inside. The chief of staff was instructed to bring the young man right into the private office. The door swung open, and Edgar offered a somewhat stiff, awkward greeting to Devon, who smiled warmly, glad to see him out of the hospital bed. Devon remarked on how incredibly fast Edgar had managed to recover, beating all medical predictions. Edgar humbly replied that it was only possible because of Devon's generous care, explaining that he wanted to pay his respects the second he got discharged. Bowing, he thanked him again, but the leader just casually brushed it. He had only done what was absolutely necessary, but Edgar felt deeply, incredibly grateful for it. In that desperate moment, this man stepped up and saved his entire family. Only one question remained, just one. Edgar was curious about Devon's motive. What actually drove Devon to do this? He'd heard some pretty wild rumors around the hospital that the big boss himself had personally pulled strings to secure a private room. Plus, Devon paid every single cent of the ICU bills to gather mana for Freya, even setting up some temporary housing for his parents. So Edgar asked him point blank, "Is all of this immense kindness tied directly into our meeting today?" Devon Moore quietly replied that his own younger sister is currently missing along with their first elite conquering team. He admitted he had let his personal emotions get the better of him, hoping Edgar wouldn't think he was just trying to force a heavy debt onto his shoulders. Still, Edgar felt a bit awkward asking why they were meeting after his release. Devon never actually saw what his unique ability was in detail, but he knew it was genuine cloning and that his double saved those people. Edgar had no plans to hide his power, telling the boss that his assumption was absolutely correct. Exactly, his skill is cloning. That answer was precisely what the leader wanted. Devon walked straight over and told the guy that they absolutely needed his immense strength. He begged Edgar to rescue the first conquering team of the Chinese Guild. Just like how Edgar saved lives without asking for any rewards, Devon won't demand any debt repayment, no pressure, but Devon made one thing very clear. And let's be honest, this brave kid is his absolute last hope to save his sister. The powerful guild leader actually bowed low, pleading for his help once more. Edgar stood there in complete silence, weighing his words carefully before responding to the guild leader. He remembered desperately begging hunters for help before, so he calmly spoke up. You already saved my family when we had absolutely nothing. Now it is my turn to return the favor. He readily accepted the guild leader's request, promising he would deliver. He'd do anything, whatever it takes. Edgar put himself at Devon's complete disposal. Without wasting a single second, the chief led him directly to the test area. Deep into the massive headquarters building, more specifically, he brought Edgar directly to the training facility. The Chinese Guild training arena, its heavily reinforced walls were perfect, so Edgar could unleash his magic or weapons without holding back. He asked if it wasn't far more urgent to draft up their survival rescue plan right away, and the leader agreed completely, but they still had a brief window to prepare. His sister's inventory skills allowed the team to pack a massive stash of critical supplies, giving them a solid 8 months of survival before anything totally runs out. But the real issue was the brutal dungeon difficulty. Even though the squad comprised elite hunters, multiple severe injuries made escaping completely impossible. A complete suicide run, no doubt about it. This task was extremely dangerous. However, Devon had a pretty radical idea to bridge that massive power gap quickly. When pushed to the absolute brink, humans can unlock insane, raw potential. This destructive, bone-crushing surge of raw strength might actually tear your muscle fibers completely apart, but it also triggers massive growth in core stats. Right now, Edgar lacked a stable core, barely getting by on wild combat instincts during his previous brutal fights, which would get him killed in there. Edgar realized exactly what the guild master was hinting at and what terrible trial he was planning. Devon. He took a swing at the kid, warning him that he had to choose how to fight back. Meanwhile, the sun was shining bright in the office of Agent Con Blake. You see, Edgar had told the agent he was taking a break from hunting. He was stuck in a hospital bed, leaving Mr. Blake worrying endlessly. Just then he heard familiar footsteps and a voice he knew too well. But Mr. Blake definitely did not expect to see his hunter looking this beat up. In total shock, the agent asked Edgar what had happened to him. The young hunter sheepishly admitted some things went down while he was away. As Edgar explained everything, Mr. Blake learned his sister was infected during the portal disaster. She contracted a mana absorption virus, though Edgar himself was completely fine. The reason was simple: even relatives can have totally different types of mana. Mr. Blake realized Edgar was only repaying Devon more for saving his family. So he joined the guild. The agent had been quite surprised. When Edgar went completely silent, he had no idea things were this complicated. Edgar had actually lost his phone during the disaster, using a spare from his clone. He asked to save that clone number as his own, refusing to restore his old one. When Mr. Blake asked how his friends would reach him, Edgar hesitated for a moment. He thought back to his final, heavy conversation with Erica and his decision. The young hunter simply replied that keeping his distance was actually for the best. Mr. Blake frowned at that, quickly turning his attention back to those brutal injuries. Edgar explained they were just souvenir bruises from a brutal guild training assignment. Apparently, he needed to adjust his stats, which meant undergoing some intense sparring. Hearing this, the agent was completely outraged at the guild. He immediately threatened to file a formal complaint against them for this abuse. But Edgar urged him to relax, explaining that it was all part of his plan. The guild head, Devon Moore, had his own sister trapped inside a dungeon. Devon was absolutely desperate, and Edgar could deeply respect that kind of resolve. He didn't deny getting totally wrecked today, but tomorrow would be different. Starting the next day, he planned to bring his clones into the mix. Before leaving, he made sure to stock up on healing potions from the office. The next morning, training started bright and early. True to his word, Edgar showed up with one of his clones in tow. The two of them pointed at Devon, declaring that today would be different. But they were wrong. The brutal sparring ended with even more painful bruises. Undeterred the next day, Edgar brought a second clone to help. Sadly, the result was exactly the same, leading to another absolute beatdown. Eventually, he returned with a third clone, hoping 4 of them would succeed. Instead, things went horribly wrong. It was even worse. Every single one of them got utterly thrashed by the guild leader. Bruised and exhausted, the defeated hunter dragged himself back to the office of Mr. Blake. He admitted that the guild leader, Kinnis, was just on another level entirely. His clones copied every move perfectly, but the stat gap was too massive. Edgar racked his brain, desperately trying to figure out how to bridge it. Then a wild idea hit him. He pulled up a picture on his phone. He showed it to Mr. Blake, asking if he could get his hands on them again. The agent was pretty unsure if it was safe, but Edgar assured him there was no need to worry. Feeling reassured, the agent agreed to fulfill the order, once he secured the requested goods. Edgar finally got what he needed and prepared to spar with Devon again, the guild head. Was honestly happy to see the young hunter visiting their headquarters once more, but as soon as his eyes locked onto Edgar, his expression quickly shifted to absolute shock. Devon never expected the young hunter to actually monsterize his own clones. The boy smirked, proudly telling the chairman that today was going to be completely different. Just earlier, the agent had happily delivered the batch of magic crystals Edgar wanted, explaining that they couldn't buy out the entire market since they were in a massive rush. But when Edgar popped open the case, he knew this amount would be more than enough to. This was bound to confuse the guild master. Just watch Devon's reaction here. Devon demanded to know exactly what the young hunter had done to those clones. Edgar just stood there holding a low-grade monster crystal, explaining he had fed them. He fed those clones a whopping 60 crystals, since they were summoned entities they could absorb them directly, boosting Edgar's own stat points in the process.